I've wanted to do a topic on the Cardinals for weeks. There's something wrong with this team, and Paul Goldschmidt has never looked worse. I cannot believe we're seeing some of the swings we are, particularly on balls that are so far out of the strike zone. For so long, we always talk about the Cardinal way, and I think part of the Cardinal way was being consistent with their decisions and being firm and having a direction, and it feels like they're literally all over the place.
That was Chris Rose on his podcast, former MLB Network star, now doing some stuff for John Boy alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. Alex, his basic question is, have the Cardinals lost their way? And it's something we've kind of been talking about here on the show for, honestly, a few years now. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line. I want to hear from the audience on this. And I think one of my biggest questions on this is just, why does it feel this way right now? Last year made sense to me. I could make sense of the pitching staff not being good when I look at the back of the baseball card and I see, all of these guys have some history of not being particularly good, or just no history whatsoever of being in Major League Baseball. That's not the case this year, dude. The guys that are struggling on your roster have histories of being successful major leaguers, and that's where I kind of go in this fork of the road of last year I could stay on board until the ship officially sank and they were 10-24, and I said, I can't ignore this any longer. It's just not going to work. They were essentially then where the Marlins are today, and the Marlins have admitted that they have failed by trading their best player in early May. So, yeah, it was time for me to jump off board. I was the captain, and I went down with the ship.
Well, early April, their manager said, yeah, I'm out on this, guys.
Before the season, he said, I don't want that mutual option. Just take it out of my contract.
We can mutually disagree.
So, to get back to the Cardinals, where the difference is this year compared to last is A, the record's a little better, and B, the problems are not something that I could have foreseen. I know many of you did. You're Nostradamus. I did not. I didn't see the offense being this bad because I thought they had better players than this. So, Alex, when you hear that question from Chris Rose, what's your answer? Have the Cardinals lost their way?
I think they have. And the part that really stuck out to me when I saw the video last night was Chris Rose talking about this team being stuck in the middle. The Cardinals have never been a middling team. You're either bad, like in the 90s, or you are consistently at the top of the NL Central competing with the best. There's never been this murky middle of who are we and how are we trying to compete with Major League Baseball, but times have changed, and it feels like the Cardinals have not, and they really are stuck in the middle, and we've talked about they don't know if they want to go into this rebuild, retool, whatever you want to call it, or if they want to be aggressive and try and compete. Hear me out on this, because the part that I was thinking about this morning was the Cardinals always seem to operate their roster, their team, led by those grizzled veterans that you always squeeze the most juice out of before they're done. Like Yadier Molina, Albert Pujols, Matt Holliday, Matt Carpenter. You're going all the way back to like the 2013s, those old grizzled vets that bring the best out of your roster. But we've always talked about how the team was never able to really develop that young superstar that can kind of take over the reins. It sure seems like Major League Baseball is now that young superstar that's taking over teams, and the Cardinals are still trying to live off of, let's squeeze the most juice out of these future Hall of Famers to get our team to the promised land. And I think you're seeing the negative results of that. When those two guys drop, you don't have the other pieces that can develop with them.
I'm so torn on this because, like, last year I thought they lost their way. Last year there was all kinds of weird things that happened, like Contreras was all of a sudden an outfielder back to catcher. You had the weird sending down of Jordan Walker, which ends up may have been the right call, who knows. But this year I don't feel like they've lost their way. And the reason I say that is I think they've been blindsided by young guys not developing, and I don't think that's on the Cardinals. Now, I think the Cardinals need to find a way to help them get out of these ruts. Like, why is it all of a sudden baseball has an answer on Nolan Gorman? Why is it Donovan and Newport aren't drawing walks? But Paul Goldschmidt falling off a cliff, that's not on the Cardinals. That's this thing called age. You know, Paul Goldschmidt's old. Nolan Arenado not hitting for power, that's age. He's getting older. I don't know if they've lost their way this year. I think they built this team somewhat the right way, to where it was, we've got this young core to those veterans that you're talking about. We just hope that Father Time hasn't finally caught up to Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado. Turns out it probably has, and the young core hasn't developed as they thought it would. Like, that's not the Cardinals losing their way. That's the way a lot of teams want to build their roster. In fact, that's the way that the Reds had their roster built last season, where they had Joey Votto as an older leadership guy that was supposed to produce for them, and then they had that young core come up with them. Now, they missed the playoffs, but they got their young core to kind of develop, and it's still starting to show some signs of life this season. I don't think they've lost their way, and I know that's going to be a very unpopular opinion here today. I think this blindsiding of this offense not developing into what they thought it was going to be isn't on the Cardinals, it's on the players that are on the field, and that's why I just can't say this is a Cardinals problem losing their way.
I keep looking at the Rangers, and I just wonder, why is it working for them and not for the Cardinals? Because they don't build their teams all that dissimilar. Like, the Rangers, look up and down their lineup, man. It looks really similar to what the Cardinals have. They have Marcus Semien. They have Corey Seager, the two pillars of the offense. And the difference this year is very simply, like, those guys are hitting, and the Cardinals versions of those players aren't. And last year, you look at it, and those guys were MVP candidates, and it's basically the equivalent of what the Cardinals were in 2022 when Goldie and Arenado had those kinds of years. But, like, pitching-wise, they're not all that different than what the Cardinals have right now. They're not this crazy good base-running team. They have 16 stolen bases this year. It's not as if they're out there just stealing bases like crazy. They play pretty good defense, kind of similar to the Cardinals. They have a pretty decent bullpen. So, I am a little confused as to why is it working for them. And I know I'm going to get the text, and it's going to say, because Bruce Bochy's their manager, guys. And maybe that's right. Maybe I'm just going to be over here and I'm going to be wrong. And Ollie's the problem all along. The coaching staff stinks. I don't believe that, but maybe that's going to be the case. But I keep looking, Alex, you talked about the roster construction issue that the Cardinals have. But I look at the team that won the bleeping World Series last year, and I don't think their roster is all that dissimilar in terms of how they constructed it. A lot of young guys that came through the system, not developed. Like, who's the superstar that they've developed internally? Please show me him, because I don't see it on the roster right now. A pitching staff that has a lot of veterans that are bolstering what they have available to them. I think the roster construction is very similar for the team that won the World Series last year to the team that you have built right here internally here in St. Louis. The difference is the results. And I don't know why that's happening. I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense.
But they're not relying on 34 and 36-year-old players to win for them. Like,
I mean, Marcus Semien is 32.
When they won, it was 32, and Corey Seager was their superstar, and he was 29 years old.
Sure.
Like, their pitching staff was old. Don't get me wrong there, although I guess it really wasn't because the old guys were hurt. But what my point is, like, you're relying on age, and if age is what got Paul Goldschmidt, you're right. That's not the Cardinals' fault. But the Cardinals banked on Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado leading this team to the World Series. And it seems like it's always you're relying on the 34-year-old and the 35-year-old to win you baseball games, and
that's baseball, though. Like, all teams do that somewhere. You have to. Otherwise, you couldn't construct a roster. Like, the timelines don't match up.
Right, but at least the successful teams feels like the guys that they're relying on are the 25, 26, 27 years old.
That's where it's gone wrong for the Cardinals. But again, I don't think that's a Cardinal way issue. I think that is a potential player. Now, if you want to say, like, maybe the Cardinals over-evaluated their talent,
but you're not developing those guys. Or you're not being aggressive enough to go get those guys.
Here's where I would push back on they haven't developed those guys. And, like, it's hard to sell this when I look at Nolan Gorman and go, hey, could be going down to the minors tomorrow, is the fact that Gorman had success last year. Brendan Donovan had success last year. Lars Nootbaar had success last year, even 2 years ago, 2022, when he came back from the minors and was good. Jordan Walker got to the big leagues and developed through the system. Why it's not working at the major league level is, I don't know if it's so much development as it is the players aren't adjusting to the big leagues. Now, if you want to say that's on the coaching staff for not making them help them adjust.
Typically, that was where you would go.
That's fair, but we keep saying, like, hey, we shouldn't really fire Turner Ward because it's not really a Turner Ward issue. So I can't speak out of both sides of my mouth. Like, it's either, hey, Turner Ward's got to go, pack up his bag and get him the hell out of town because he's not developing the hitters, or it is, hey, the players got to figure it out, and it's not on the coaching staff. So that's where I would push back. When I think of lost your way, I think of last year's team. But I think Cardinals baseball, I think good defense, fundamentally sound, and good pitching. Last year, pitching sucked. Last year, defense sucked. Fundamentally sucked. We're terrible on the base paths. Like, you laugh, but it's all true. Like,
no,
that
you're
was
right. I'm not disagreeing with any of it.
Cardinals' way was lost. This team, good pitching, good defense. On the base paths, outside a couple weird moments from Contreras, have been very good. To me, that is not a Cardinals lost way. The offense, for whatever reason, is just lost, and I don't view that as on the St. Louis Cardinals.
Man, I'm getting a lot of pushback on the idea that the Cardinals and the Rangers built their team similarly. Guys, go look at the rosters. Like, go show me the massive differences. Now, Alex, your point on Goldie being, 36 years old, and that being an older age than the guys that they have down there on their roster, totally fair. It's like 2 years back time from where the Cardinals are at right now.
MVP Paul Goldschmidt was probably your prime chance to be what the Texas Rangers were.
Yeah, 2022. But unfortunately, you didn't have the core group of young players that the Cardinals have now then. It would be like this group of core young players and push them back to the 2022 season.
See, doesn't it feel like that's why they've lost their way? Because, the Cardinals always felt like they knew how to mesh the current roster with the up-and-coming guys and put them together to be competitive. And now it just always feels like the Cardinals are, we got these guys, but we don't have these guys ready yet, so we might rush these guys. But by the time these guys are here, the development's not right, so we got to send them back down. And then these guys are getting older. That's where it feels like they've lost their way.
It's a fair point. And
sorry to interrupt, too.
No, it's totally reasonable. And I
don't
think
have a rebuttal.
I think my biggest thing is going back to what T-Bone had to say about losing their way with the young guys. I've seen these guys be good.
Yeah.
And I'm growing confused more so by the day as to why Dylan Carlson was 15% above league average in 2021 and since then has gone exactly league average, 20% below league average, and can't hit anything so far through 3 games this year. I'm growing more confused why Jordan Walker last year, after coming back up to the big league level, fixed his swing, had everything figured out, finished the year with an OPS of 785, which is really good for a 21-year-old rookie. I cannot overstate how excellent that is for a 21-year-old rookie. And this year looked lost at the plate. I can't get over the fact that Nolan Gorman last year at 23 years old slugged .478 at the big league level, and he did not fix everything in his swing. Even when he was even when he was having success, the high fastball still a problem for him. And this year he's slugging .325. Why are these guys coming up, having some success, and then immediately, seemingly the next season, the league figures them out, and the Cardinals cannot figure out how to adjust? I don't get any of that. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't compute. And so that, to me, is where the Cardinals are losing their way. It's not that they're not developing superstars. Dude, it is freaking hard to develop superstars. The Rangers won the World Series. None of their players that they developed were superstars. The guys that were superstars on their roster, they acquired from elsewhere. They went out and they signed Marcus Semien. They signed Corey Seager to be the superstars that they lacked internally. Sounds Cardinals-y to me. But they were able to produce a few guys that had a really great season, and they captured lightning in the bottle at the right time. Cardinals aren't capturing anything from these young dudes, and they're running out of time to be able to do so before this season crashes and burns once again, and we're going to get to June in that scenario, and we're once again going to be saying the season doesn't matter. The games, the individual results don't matter. Now we're looking big picture once again, and that is a terrible place to be as an organization, and I don't know how they got here or why it is happening. I will listen to any of your explanations on the text line today because I can't even push back anymore. Maybe it's the coaching staff. Maybe it's the front office. Maybe it's the player development system. Maybe it's a combination of everything. But when Chris Rose goes out there and says the Cardinals have lost their way, Alex, a year ago, I would have pushed back so hard and said this is a one-off. This is a weird season. They don't have a pitching staff. I can't do that anymore, man. I can't sit up here today and tell you that they haven't lost their way because it sure feels like they have.
Although we've come.
No, I didn't have the song.
Oh, it's all right. Just want to make sure BK's in a good place right now.
Man, you sent that out on social media yesterday.
Did it hurt even more?
Yeah, it hurt.
I thought it was great.
It was worse because we didn't even have the bed behind it. We didn't have the song behind it on social media.
My vocals are amazing.
Freaking trademark issues.
I was the
copyright issues.
I was the fifth member of Boyz II Men for how good these vocals are.
We're going to hear from you guys throughout the day today. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. The YouTube chat is off and running at youtube.com/101ESPN STL. You guys can always watch us over there. You can always leave us a mic drop as well. The 101 ESPN app is where you can go to do so. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we're going to talk a little more about Drew Bannister, where he belongs on the list of the best coaches that were available this offseason. But next, What has been the most surprising development for the Cardinals so far this year to you? We'll give you our answers to that coming up next here on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone on BK, so what's been the most surprising development for the Cardinals thus far? There's been a lot of surprises this year to say the least. Over on MLB.com, they put together a list, Alex, of the most surprising developments for every team across the league. And for the Cardinals, John Denton went with the offense, not the pitching, that's been slowing down the Redbirds. That makes a lot of sense. I think we all agree. It's a surprise to everybody that the offense is this bad. But if I made you specify one thing, not just the offense in its entirety, what for you, Alex, has been the biggest surprise to you so far this season?
Mine's been the starting pitching. Because it's weird to go a positive for how bad this team is, but coming into the season, I thought we would be complaining about this pitching and being as bad as it was last year. And Kyle Gibson and Lance Lynn, who I crushed the Cardinals in the offseason for, being like, these are the guys you're going with that are expected to fix your pitching staff. You're looking at a 3.68 ERA and a 3.28 ERA. Both of these guys are eating either 6 innings or 7 innings every time they go out there. That was not expected. Plus, the strikeout stuff is there, which I also did not expect with those guys. Has it looked pretty when Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson are on the mound all the time? No, sometimes it's not a Picasso. But right now, I expected Sonny Gray and Miles Michaelis to be your best pitchers with Steven Matz a close third. And Steven Matz isn't even in the conversation. Michaelis probably shouldn't pitch anymore. And your 2 best pitchers are Sonny Gray and Kyle Gibson.
Yeah, I like those ones, but I'm going to go negative because we stink. What? So
come on, man.
I would say the biggest surprise for me, a lot of people are probably going to go with Paul Goldschmidt, would say, oh, well, Goldie falling off a cliff is the biggest surprise. I would point to last year and say, man, lowest slugging percentage of career, kind of felt like maybe this could be, I'm not saying it was going to be, but could have been the year where it all falls off. My biggest surprise is the struggles of Donovan and Lars Nootbaar, because
Good one.
I think those guys, when I think of Nootbaar and Donovan, just thinking of their profile, can hit for average, can hit for a little pop, got like 10 to 20 home run power in their bat. Oh, and they've got a really good batter's eye, and they're going to get on base. To me, that screams an all-around really good player. You know, I don't think it's ever going to be a guy that's a superstar, but should be like 10 to 20% above league average. And both Donovan and Nootbaar are not only are not hitting, but their on base is really suffering as well because of that. And I thought that would be the one thing that, even when they go through their struggles, we've talked about this before. I think we talked about it a little bit last year, if not earlier this year. When Donovan struggles, it's not as bad as like when a Gorman struggles. Because when Gorman struggles, it could be 20 strikeouts and 24 at-bats, 1 hit, and he's not drawing any walks. At least when Donovan struggles, Nootbaar struggles, they should be driving their on base by drawing walks, giving you competitive at-bats. And I'm just not seeing that so far through the first month and a half, to where these guys, to me, I think they're going to get it turned around. Like, Donovan's not going to have a below 300 on-base percentage. Neither is Lars Nootbaar. But those two really struggling to the effect that they have really is the one that is the biggest surprise to me.
I would go with Jordan Walker being sent back down and looking as bad as he did early this season. I didn't see it coming, man. I really didn't. I was unprepared for this. Jordan Walker in the final, it was 97 games. So basically, let's call it 100 games. After he came back from his minor league assignment. It's not like fun with numbers. It's literally starting the first day that he got back until the end of the season last year. He hit 275 with an on-base percentage of 350 and a slugging percentage of 455. If you're just looking at how does that rank among Major League Baseball, it was about an 800 OPS. He looked like the player that we all expected him to be last year. He was on pace with those numbers for 23 home runs and 70 RBI on the season. It's a hell of a year, dude. Especially for a dude his age. You just can't ask for a whole lot more than that. Maybe I assumed naively that he would just come up and we would see a linear progression and he would go from being 15% above league average to 20+% above league average this season. That couldn't be further from what has taken place. He was hitting 155 with an OPS below 500 when he was sent back down to the minors. And last year when he was sent down, there was every reason to question whether or not that was the correct move. I personally thought it was fair because he was on the ground way too much and I thought they needed to correct it. And also, it was a bad situation at the major league level. Go ahead and send him down. Don't put him around this situation that's taking place, and let's see what he can do in the minors. This year, there was no alternative. They had to send him down. He was lost at the plate. If Goldie could go down right now, they should send him down. But since it's not an option, literally, for them to do so right now, they can't.
Called a conditioning stint. They should sit him for 2 weeks.
Jordan Walker, they have that opportunity. So go down, get yourself right, hopefully figure out the hip that's been leaking. T-Bone was watching some video earlier today. It doesn't seem like that's necessarily changed so far. So keep him down there for a while until he gets it fixed. When we see him again, I hope it's for the rest of his career and he becomes a legit superstar at the major league level. But to me, the single biggest surprise so far this year is that it hasn't just reverted back to what it was early last season. It's gotten worse. This is the worst version of Jordan Walker that we had seen so far in his major league career. That shocked me. I didn't see that coming as a possibility. So that to me is the biggest surprise that we have seen so far this year. But I think T-Bones was another one that I considered. I didn't come into the season expecting necessarily that Donovan and Nootbaar would be stars. I thought that there was almost no chance, though, that they were bad. I would have been shocked if you had told me at this point in the season, below league average hitters. Really? Okay. I mean, we've seen it a little bit with Nootbaar.
You sounded so sad there, man.
But with Donovan especially, for him to just, the floor has dropped out, dude. His on-base percentage is below 300. He's got an OPS of 680. I didn't see that coming at all. And that's with 4 home runs already this year. He's hitting for a little bit of power, but it's just nothing else. That's shocking to me.
I'm shocked that I'm the one that went positive on this.
Well, if you want a positive one from me, Mason Wynn being able to do that linear progression that we just talked about.
Yeah, because no other prospect can do it.
Yeah, but I'm actually genuinely shocked. Now, look, he is starting to struggle, and I think you're going to see him finish below league average this year.
I do too.
Which, again, is not a bad thing. His main purpose of being here this year was, can you play Gold Glove level shortstop?
Also, he's hitting
done
for
that.
average.
Yeah, and I think that's going to go a little bit as well.
Even now, though, during these struggles, it's not a great average, don't get me wrong, but he's still hitting for a little bit of average, and I think that's who he's going to be early on in his career. He's probably going to be one of those guys like the analytical darlings, the people that just look at their spreadsheets and don't actually watch the baseball games. They're going to be like, yeah, that guy's not that great. And then you actually watch the baseball games, you're like, no, he impacts the game on a night in, night out basis. Every single night he does something that helps your team win. He contributes towards the winning. That, no pun intended, that's who Mason Wynn is. So I'm totally with you, T-Bone. He's been a pleasant surprise so far.
Another surprising one that we didn't bring up is how impactful the leadership has been from the veterans. Carpenter, Brandon Crawford.
He's not around anymore.
Well, what are you talking about?
That's why they're going through this downward
He's
spiral
impacting
right now.
AAA. He's
Stop
impacting
He's
the
been in
AAA roster.
When did he go down for his rehab assignment?
I don't know.
Yeah, what do you think we're keeping track of Matt Carpenter
just figured
rehab
it out.
updates?
Guys, he's going to hit cleanup when he comes back, isn't he?
I mean, why not? Against a righty? Sure.
No, against lefties and righties.
At this point, who cares? Like, sure, switch it up. Go ahead and see what that looks like.
Hey, he's got another job to do. It's impact the young players in our system.
All right, he went down on May 3rd. That was his first rehab stint. When did this Cardinals
This is BK
slide
to
begin?
tie into Cardinals success.
Cardinals slide began on opening day.
Okay.
It actually began on spring training.
Yeah. When, like, all the vibes were wrong. Like, the clubhouse is destroyed. And they're like, it's fine.
We're
The offense hasn't homered in 15 games.
okay.
It's fine.
Since he went down to the minors, they've lost 4 out of their last 5. It's Matt Carpenter's fault. We need to get him back with the club. It's time. Activate him tonight. Get him to Milwaukee. Somebody get him on the first plane to Milwaukee.
You don't believe that.
I kind of do.
You need to shut that
I've got to
up.
latch on to
got
something.
You are
Crawford.
the last person on this show that believes in good vibes that make teams good.
I need something to latch on to right now because I'm losing faith in everything that I believed in.
Crawford is our leader right now.
Crawford is
How's that
Arenado's guy.
I don't know, man.
All right, coming up in 15 minutes. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers.
Wayno
But
and his
next,
guitar.
earlier today, Greg Wyshynski had a piece on the best coaches that are currently available on the open market, Alex. Who could the teams that are now looking for a head coach, including your beloved Toronto Maple Leafs, who could they go hire? He ranked the coaches. Where would Drew Bannister fit on this list? We'll tell you next here on 101 ESPN.
Terra Hunters is here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals back in action tonight as they start a 4-game set with the Milwaukee Brewers in Milwaukee. Sonny Gray gets the start for St. Louis. First pitch tonight is at 6:40. This Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. So, Greg Wyshynski is one of our favorite guests that we have on the air regularly, Alex. And he writes about the NHL over at ESPN.com. And earlier today...
You might not believe it when we talk about him, though.
I enjoy him. I think he's really good at his job.
Of course you do.
He creates conversation, and that's part of the job. All right. So, he wrote about the best candidates that are available for the NHL and which coaches are out there. His number one candidate...
Congrats, Blues fans.
Put him in a category of the big boss. It's Craig Berube.
Yeah, nice. Yeah.
So he was fired here in St. Louis.
The team that legit has a roster to win a Stanley Cup, or at least half of one, says the best coach to do that for us is the guy that was on your team.
Yeah, it seems like every team that has an opening right now, their first call, they say, hey, are you interested before we go talk to anybody else? They call Craig Berube, and then they go to every other option that's available to
Craig
them.
Berube is like the pop star, and everybody's throwing their underwear on stage to him.
Yeah. If the Blues were trying to win right now, like trying to contend, I'm just going to move right past
I got some PTSD from Tom Jones when I was 8.
Oh, that's where it happened.
Oh, yeah. Uncomfortable.
If the Blues were trying to go out there and find the best coach possible to win a Stanley Cup this year, they would be in the Craig Berube market. Since that's not where they're at and they're retool.
It's wild that we're in that market, you know?
I know. Since they're not, I don't think that even if there wasn't the history here, obviously, if he did all of what he did here in St. Louis, but it happened in Philadelphia, for example, where he was previously, he would not be the prime candidate here for this job right now.
He's the guy that Doug Armstrong said that they're not going after.
Exactly. 1,000 games, trying to win a cup, go out there and get the players to be able to fit his need. They're not there. But here are some of the other coaches that he mentioned, Alex, and I'm curious if you would have maybe gone down this path over the Drew Bannister path that the Blues ultimately decided to go down. Big names, fresh firings is the next category he has. In this, he includes Dean Evison, Don Granato, Dave Hackstall, Sheldon Keefe, Lane Lambert, Todd McClellan, David Quinn, DJ Smith, and Jay Woodcroft. Do you think any of those names fit the current timeline for the Blues and would have been interesting hires, maybe even more so than Drew Bannister?
I think there's two, and I've made one very clear in Sheldon Keefe, and then the other one is Jay Woodcroft. I would put Jay Woodcroft on the same level as Drew Bannister, so honestly, I feel like those are two level playing fields, but I would have Sheldon Keefe above that. And I know I'm on an island, but I'll be the last one laughing when he has success at his second team. But all of those other names that you just mentioned, no. Dean Evison, DJ Smith. These are all guys that you just, like Greg labeled it, fresh fires that not only are fresh fires, but have had like multiple opportunities in the National Hockey League and it hasn't worked out. So I would say other than Sheldon Keefe and maybe Jay Woodcroft, I think Drew Bannister is better than all of the other options.
So the other guys that are in here, I'm just going to name a few names that are at least interesting, even if not necessarily good fits here in St. Louis. Bruce Boudreau, who's apparently one of the candidates for the Toronto job.
For him.
This guy is in a positive way. We love our good buddy Bruce Boudreau, but he is like a cockroach. Like you think you killed it, and it's like,
Yeah,
no,
in a positive way.
In a positive way, he's like a cockroach. Like I thought I killed you. No, you're still around.
Gerard Gallant.
Another one like a cockroach.
Other people, Davis Payne.
What are we doing, man?
Looking for a second chance, according to this piece.
Yeah, he's been looking for a second chance since 2009.
Mark Savard.
Mark Savard?
He's on this list.
Has he been a head coach?
No, he's in the category of key assistants seeking their first job.
He's a head coach in the OHL.
Available. You've got John Stevens, Guy Boucher.
Guy Boucher, but go for it.
I was right there.
It's French.
Mike Van Ryn.
It's French for guy.
David Carl.
David Carl should be above all of those because
he's just in a separate category of college names.
But it's a new face. I mean, if you hear any of those names that were just listed off, none of them are better than Drew Bannister.
That's kind of where I fall. I think you should have probably explored, and I would assume they did, Jay Woodcroft, Todd McClellan, Sheldon Keefe. You have to at least call the agent for Brenda Moore.
And Montgomery, and then Joel Quenneville's up there.
Yeah, you got to call all these guys, but when I see this list put in front of me, Alex, the reason why I wanted to do this is because I can see where you end up back with Drew Bannister. It's not hard for me to understand how you go down that list of names. Maybe you talk to 3 or 4 of them that we mentioned at some point during that list, and you end up saying, you know what? Let's try this thing with Drew Bannister. Let's see what it looks like. And if it fails spectacularly, fine. I mean, we just saw, 50 games with him, and it wasn't a failure. So I don't think it's going to be this colossal mistake by the team. It might not end up working out the way that they expected to, but I don't think it's going to be this colossal crash and burn failure. I can totally see how you end up back with the Drew Bannister hire.
This is why when we talked about the initial announcement of him getting hired, I was not mad about Drew Bannister. In fact, out of all of the realistic names, this was the best option for the Blues because you have somebody who's been there, who's done that, who knows the players that you have, and has the ability to work with the younger players that are sprinkled in. I was just looking for the next tier above Drew Bannister, not Stanley Cup championship qualifiers unless Jim Montgomery or Joel Quenneville were interested, but I was looking for the next step because I felt like the Blues were ready to take the next step. They evidently felt like, nope, those guys aren't where we're at right now, and Drew Bannister might be the guy that could take that next step.
You were looking at the Keefe, McClellan, Woodcroft range.
Yes, Quenneville, and if Montgomery would have been available, I would have investigated that. Yeah. I was looking at those because to me, like we talked about that day, I just don't want the players that you need to take that next step so that you can be competitive when those younger players are ready to be competitive. Thomas, Kyrou, Buchnevich, Neighbors, Toropchenko. I was looking at it as I need somebody who might be able to get the best out of them. And maybe Bannister can, and I'm wrong here. But I felt like to get Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou from 70 and 80 points to 100 points, that might need to be that next step up with a head coach.
So the other thing I wanted to ask you about, based upon this list and Craig Berube being listed at the top, what do you think the reaction is going to be in St. Louis if Berube goes on, whether it's with Jersey, Toronto? I think those are probably the top 2 jobs that are available this offseason. If he takes one of those jobs and he ends up having a ton of success next year, maybe to the point of winning a cup, how will that be received in St. Louis?
I think there's a couple of different qualifiers. One is how Drew Bannister is doing. Like if he's got this team taking a step forward, then I think Blues fans are going to be okay with it. I don't think any Blues fan is going to have ill will towards Craig Berube. I think he's going to be one of the few guys that gets rooted for when he goes to be a head coach elsewhere and has success. I think the frustration from Blues fans are going to be where it was when Berube was fired with the front office. And I really wonder if Craig Berube is going to be viewed a lot like Joel Quenneville was viewed when he was fired from St. Louis, to where it was like, man, we let a really good one go. I mean, the fact that he is, in Greg Wyshynski's terms, a big boss, when/if, because there's always a big if with this, if he goes on to have success the same way that Quenneville did with Colorado and Chicago, maybe not even as much as a dynasty like he had in Chicago, but, you go win one Stanley Cup and get to another Stanley Cup. People are going to love Craig Berube no matter what because he's a legend here. But I really wonder if that's going to put a worse taste in people's mouths with the front office for the Blues.
Front office or players?
Both.
I think it gets pointed back. I don't think it gets pointed towards Doug Armstrong. I think it gets pointed towards...
Yeah, you're probably right.
I'm going to specify one player, Jordan Kyrou.
Yeah, you're probably right. But that's why I said the qualifier with it is, does Bannister get the most out of those players? Because if he does, then I don't think there is going to be any ill will towards it. If you get a John Cooper-esque out of Drew Bannister, nobody's going to care. But I think even if Berube goes on to win 3 straight Stanley Cups, nobody's going to hate Craig Berube.
No,
people are
of course not.
People are going to be looking at it as, damn, we let that guy go when we should have just kept them here and adjusted the roster. That's where the front office comes into play. You had the roster in place with the Berube. You just didn't adjust it to the way you needed to with Berube.
There's a lot of blame to go around as to how the Blues got into this spot. Long contracts, no trade clauses, not giving one to Petro, all of these different things, right? And so, like, the front office is not blameless, in my opinion. I think they sometimes get less blame than they deserve for how we got here. Now, I also think they deserve credit for acknowledging that they're here and putting together a plan to get them out of this situation. So both things can be true. I think the players deserve a lot of the blame as to why Craig Berube is no longer here, specifically the stars, the guys that are paid a lot of money. If they had performed the way that they expected to, Craig Berube would still be your head coach today. But if Berube goes on to win a cup elsewhere, let's say he's in Toronto next year and they go, even if they get to the conference finals and it's like a really hard fought series, they come a little bit short and it's like, oh yeah, they don't have defensemen still. What did you think was going to happen here? I think people will look to that if the Blues are similar to where they are right now next year, miss the playoffs by a little bit, and Kyrou is still a frustrating player. I think the people in St. Louis will say, man, I miss having that guy on our bench. And they will say that guy, Jordan Kyrou, is why he's not here. I don't know if that's entirely fair, but I think that will be the viewpoint this point next year if that's how both seasons end up going.
Yeah.
Berube's going to be one of the biggest storylines in the NHL next year, and that will certainly not, we will not be an exception here in St. Louis in that regard. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Questions and answers is coming up next here on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. Coming up in about 10 minutes or so, we'll get to Ken Rosenthal's piece from earlier today on his explanation, his thoughts on why so many young players are struggling to bridge the gap between AAA to Major League Baseball. We'll get into that here in just a little bit. This one comes from the 618. BK, earlier today you asked why some of the younger players have shown success in 1 year, but then the league figures them out and it causes the players to not have enough success moving forward. Do you think that could be because the organizational philosophy is so behind in the times compared to the rest of the league that it has trickled down into how the coaches try to develop the players? I think it's a fair question. I don't know the answer. I felt like, and you guys, I'm curious your thoughts on this. I felt like the Cardinals had done a pretty good job of developing players in the minors, position players. Because when we got to see them at the big league level, we saw Brendan Donovan come up and immediately have success. Lars Nootbaar came up, immediately had success. Even Juan Yepes came up, had some success right away. Like, we've seen a lot of these guys, Jordan Walker to a degree, they come up to the big league level. Every team has successes and failures, don't get me wrong, but we've seen even Dylan Carlson came up, and after that first weird 2020 COVID season, really good season his first time around. So I think the Cardinals' development path, especially what Jeff Albert had put into place in the minor leagues, forget what he did at the major league level, but the development plan for hitters had been pretty successful for the most part. What's weird to me is why it's not sticking once they get to the major leagues, because teams have an ability to scout them, they find the hole, and then they just exploit it time and time and time again. So I don't know. I can't explain why this is happening.
I know we talked with Saris about this, but man, I really do wonder if that Jeff Albert effect was more impactful than what we thought it was, because we didn't see these younger guys at the major league level when Jeff Albert was here, but you saw the numbers that they had in the minors, and Saris put those numbers out that first year, which was the last year of Jeff Albert, the numbers were significant in terms of slug or the ball getting up in the air, if I'm not mistaken. And then the year he was gone, you saw it decline and decline fast.
Yeah, I think you're right on the development side of things, because they are coming through the system. It isn't like we're talking about a Nolan Gorman that stalls out at Double-A, and all of a sudden you go, well, what happened to the Cardinals' third best prospect? Like, why did he not get to the majors? And they're having success in year one at the majors. It's hard to explain what is going wrong. Like, I truly have no idea. To your point it doesn't make sense. It's not like that they're getting this message throughout the minor leagues. They get to the majors, have success, and the Cardinals go, you're having success. Let's tweak this, and let's see if it gets better. And then all of a sudden they just snap of the finger and they fall apart. Like, I can't imagine that is happening within the Cardinals organization.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 314. Guys, if you had a do-over and you could pick a new Stanley Cup champion today, would you change it, or would you stick with your pick from the beginning of the playoffs? I had the Panthers at the beginning of the playoffs, feeling pretty good about that right about now.
Yeah, I mean, I picked the Hurricanes or the Panthers. I think I leaned more towards the Hurricanes. They're down 2-0 to the Rangers. I would
repick if I was you.
I did not. I mean, it's going back to Carolina, so I'm not too worried about that. I just did not expect the Rangers to be this locked in. It's not Kreider. It's Shesterkin.
Tomatoes.
If I could change it, yeah, I probably would go to Florida. I probably would go to Florida because they've got everything right now. I still don't buy into Bobrovsky, though. Typically by the conference finals is when he starts to fall apart, but I probably would switch it over to Florida instead of Carolina.
I'd probably switch to New York. I've been really impressed. Now, look, them sweeping Washington was like the most predictable thing in these playoffs so far. But I've been really impressed with the way that they've played Carolina, because I really like that Carolina team going into the playoffs, and they're up 2-0. We'll see what happens when they go back to Carolina, but I'm not feeling very great about my Carolina pick.
It's funny that none of us picked the Western Conference team.
I said that at the beginning. I said I would be shocked if a Western Conference team wins the Stanley Cup final this year.
I thought Edmonton was a juggernaut until they choked a 3-goal lead last night, and Dallas choked it as well. Colorado might be the best one in the Western Conference once again.
Yeah, they just all have something that they are deficient at. I don't think that the Stars have
goaltending or defense.
I think they have those things. It's hard to play good defense against Colorado. I don't trust their offense to be consistent in a series like this.
It's been stagnant.
And we know the issues with Edmonton and Vancouver. Like, I don't know if I can trust them in a playoff series, given how early they are in their path to this. I think you have to fail first before you're able to break through and get to a Stanley Cup. I'm a big believer in that. I think this is the year that the Canucks fall a little short, and then next year they get into real serious contending status.
I don't know how you guys feel, but is it just me? I don't find the Western Conference compelling at all.
I agree.
Like, the East is so much more fun. Like, you had all of the Boston, Florida stuff. Like, that's a fun series, and that's before I even bring up, like, what happened last night in that game. But the Western Conference, to me, just feels blah.
I think Edmonton, Colorado would be a really fun, compelling Western Conference final, but these two series I do not find particularly interesting.
3 of the 4 in the West are compelling because they're all offensive-driven. Vancouver's offensive-driven.
It's
the
funny
same
how
can be
it's all
said.
flipped.
Edmonton, Colorado. But the problem is those 3 teams are going to really struggle when you get against a nasty, stingy, tough team in the East, because that's 3 of those 4 teams that are playing right now.
Totally agree. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Believe It or Not. You give us a scenario, we'll tell you if we are believing it or not here on 101 ESPN. But next, Ken Rosenthal had a really good explanation earlier today on why so many young players are struggling to go from their success at the AAA level to having success at the major league level. We'll let you hear why he felt like they're having those struggles next year on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends over at Rhino Shield. If you're a business owner, listen up right now, because Rhino Shield is the company for you to fix the way that your business looks. The exterior, the roof, if it looks old, worn down, if it's starting to get rust built up on it, if you've got metal siding or metal roofing because of all of the rain, then you need a change. And you might be thinking, well, yeah, sure, Alex, I'll do it myself, though. You can try, but you're going to be doing it again and again and again and again, because the paint that you're going to buy from the hardware store, it's not going to stick like Rhino Shield. They don't use paint. It's ceramic coating with a 2 to 3 coating system that sticks 8 to 10 times better than anything else that you're going to put on the exterior of your business or maybe just your home. And here's the thing. It sticks to anything that you've got. Brick, block, stucco, whatever. I had asbestos on my old house. That would have worked on it. Rhino Shield does it all, and it's backed by a 25-year transferable warranty. So give Darren a call today and change the look of your business, of your home with Rhino Shield. 877-25-RHINO, 877-25RHINO.com.
right, so we're seeing a lot of prospects, not just here in St. Louis, but across the major leagues, struggling when they get up to the major league level, Alex. We saw this with Jackson Holliday with the Baltimore Orioles. Came up, struggled for like 15 games, boom, sit back down to AAA. But he was succeeding at AAA before and has been succeeding at AAA since. So where is this disconnect? That's something that Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic tried to explore earlier today in his piece over at The Athletic. And a couple of the things that he was able to find. One, pitching. Pitching is just so much better at the major league level right now than it is at AAA. Alex, there's a fancy, nerdy number called Stuff Plus. Saris was the one that kind of came up with this. And among all major league pitchers this year, the average for Stuff Plus is 100. It's kind of like OPS Plus. The average major leaguer, 100 for OPS Plus. Average major league pitcher, 100 for Stuff Plus, okay?
I'm following so far.
For context, at AAA, that's 86.
Oh.
Major league level, average 100. AAA level, 86. Last year, 1 year ago, it was at 95 was the average for AAA. So the gap between pitching at the AAA level and the major league level, it may have never been this wide. It certainly has not been this wide in recent seasons. And that's just looking at stuff. That's not talking about command, control, pre-scouting, any of that stuff. Just, hey, how nasty is this stuff based on the metrics of it compared to what you would see at the major league level? Not the same. All right. Among major league starting pitchers, to give you context on what the difference is here, that's roughly the difference between Mitch Keller and Griffin Canning, who most people in our audience do not know of. Only 29 major league starters in the entire league have Stuff Plus of 86 or worse. So there are basically one pitcher, one starter per team that is as bad as the average starter that players are seeing right now down at the minor league level, at AAA specifically. That ain't good, man. There are a couple other things that he hones in on, though. The schedule being one of them, and I hadn't really considered this. After the COVID season, they switched the way that they do series at the minor league level because of the travel and because money concerns, honestly. So now they basically play one team for a week, 6 games in a row, and then they have an off day. Matt Carpenter went down to AAA for his rehab assignment and told Ken Rosenthal the schedule is a huge piece of why it's so hard to adjust to the big league level. Because down in AAA, you'll see the same pitchers for a week. Like, think about if the Cardinals played the Brewers for the next week straight, 6 straight games.
No, they still wouldn't hit.
They would be able to kind of figure out, okay, what does it look like when I see this reliever over the course of a week? You'd probably see them potentially 3 times in that week stretch, especially the high leverage guys. Suddenly you're starting to sit on their fastball a little bit better. You are able to see the ball coming out of their hand a little bit better. It's similar to a third time through the order type of a knock that you would see during an individual game, but it's happening over a series. So that's something that's playing into this. Pre-scouting, totally different at the minor league level compared to the major league level. I talked about this with Ollie Marmol last time I was down at the ballpark. He was saying, like, hey, something that these guys don't understand when they get up to the big league level, people will hone in on what the biggest weakness is in your swing and only pitch to that. At the minor league level, they're just trying to do what they do best. Like, if your best pitch is a slider, I'm just going to throw you my slider in a 2-strike count. I don't care what your weakness is. At the big league level, they're good at everything. They're exploiting your weakness. So all of these things are playing into it. Alex, what did you make of this when you read the story from Ken Rosenthal earlier today on why top prospects are having so much trouble adjusting to the big leagues?
I felt like I was more confused as to why they're struggling because, like, all of those examples make sense, but you're still seeing it take place as soon as they get to the major leagues. And, like, if you look at certain players, and I think the Cardinals are the hardest part with this test that we're trying to figure out, because they have success at AAA. Like, they're having success, but as soon as they get to the major league level, it's for a flash in the can, and then all of a sudden that's not the right saying, is it?
Flash in the pan. You're
flash
close.
in the
You're
can,
right
same thing. But then it's gone, and they don't get it back. And then you got to go to AAA, and then you figure it out, and then you got to come back. It just is so baffling with it. Part of me wonders, and I don't know if anybody has the Stuff Plus numbers for AA, of like how that compares to major leagues.
I don't have that for you.
Because, I mean, T-Bone's talked about how AAA is just like an old man's game right now, and we're not seeing like the actual talent. It seems like the best prospects get to AA, and then when they click, they find their way to the major leagues.
And then fail. For the most part.
But does that mean you just need to keep your best hitters in Double-A longer until they feel like they're ready to take that next step? This is why when they sent down Jordan Walker for the second straight time, I'm thinking, why? You got to keep them up here and figure it out, because going to AAA is not going to make any difference for these hitters.
The answer is pressure. That's what they would tell you, and you don't have to agree with it, and that's totally fair.
But you go to AAA with no pressure to gain your confidence back, but you're not going against the type of pitching you're going to go. So when you come back, you're going up against better talent and lose all of the pressure.
But the question is confidence, right? Alex, I'm sure you've done something.
But how do you
in your
keep
life.
confidence when you go up against somebody that's inferior to you, and then when you get back to when they're on the same level as you, you can't compete with
mentality? Because the hope is like it. I don't know if you've ever done anything, Alex, where you lacked confidence. I have. I've done stuff in my life where like you just go into something, and whether it's because you lacked preparation, you didn't feel like you were ready for it, whatever, right? You lack confidence, you go into it, and you're never going to succeed in that situation. If you go into something lacking confidence in yourself, the odds of you having success in doing it are so incredibly low. For somebody like Jordan Walker, I don't know if this is going to work or not. I want to say that on the front end. You might end up being right, Alex, that it's just going to be this vicious cycle of him going down, getting confidence, coming back up, breaking the confidence, going down, etc. But what my perspective on this and why I think it could work is because if he had got to the level where he goes to the plate and expects to make an out every time he's going to the plate at the major league level, mentally, you're broken. And so you got to go find a way to get more confidence. So when you go to the plate, you feel something that is different. So much about hitting from the guys that have done it. I'm not a hitter, obviously. So much about it from everything that I've heard explained is about a feel, a mentality, a confidence level. When you walk to the plate, you're going to beat that dude in front of you that's throwing you the pitches that are nastier than anything you've ever seen in your life. Well, if you lose that, you got to go find it again. And the best way they believe for Jordan Walker to find it again is to go have success against guys that are worse than him. Yeah, because you're right. The stuff he's seeing down there, it ain't the same as what he's going to see when he gets back up to the big league level. And he may end up failing again because he hasn't seen the kind of stuff that he's seeing at the big league level. But if it works and he gets his confidence back and then you get back up to the major league level, my guess is you have a little bit more success because you're confident when you walk to the plate. You have a feel as a hitter that you're going to be able to have success this time around. So that would be why I think it's worthwhile and why I think it was the right call. But he is eventually going to have to figure it out at this level. There will be a point in time in which it's a sink or swim time, and he's just got to go out there every day and show whether or not you can fail.
I feel like that first time you do it makes sense. But the second time you do it, it's like, dude, you're going to have to figure this out at the major league level. And I know we're just honing in on one player right now. I think this could be kind of a widely discussed Major League Baseball conversation. But after reading Rosenthal's piece, it's like, if it's not benefiting these guys because the massive difference from talent level that you're seeing at AAA and major leagues, then maybe there's just needs to be a different strategy in terms of.
Well, what do you do then?
That's the part that I don't know. I don't know. Do you keep him in Double-A longer?
I think what you would see is that the Double-A stuff is worse than this.
Yeah.
Like, while yes, it is younger players, they have no command down there. T-Bone, you've seen it in person. Like, the command issues at the AA level compared to the AAA level, they're real. AA, you've got some stuff, but you have no command. AAA, you've got command, but a lot of those guys are, if they have really good stuff, they're rushed up to the big league level and either put into the bullpen or become starters right away. So I don't think the answer is, well, just keep them down in AA longer. I think you still have to have success at the AAA level, but then trying to find out, is this guy ready for big league pitching? It's like there's no way to know.
It's like a false success. It's like, oh, look how great he's at AAA. Let's get him up here. And then he comes up and it struggles. It's like, well, now what?
I think what you're describing, and it's why, like, Jackson Holiday is in the minors right now, not playing for Baltimore.
They're talking about it with Milwaukee's guy right now.
Yeah, and the only reason he's up there currently still, Jackson Torino, is because Milwaukee is like having success, and they can kind of go with the plan of, okay, we're going to let him learn on the fly here. But I can tell you right now, if you flip the Cardinals and Milwaukee's position, I think Walker's probably still up here potentially, and Jackson Torino is definitely down in the minor leagues. Because I think what this is showing you, and we just hold it on the Cardinals and go, they're breaking Jordan Walker. No, man, like, the reason that you see some prospects have success in organizations is not because they're on a winning organization. It's because they're on an organization that doesn't really care, and they can have them grow and learn on the fly.
It's a fair point.
And I think that's what this is. If the Cardinals were truly in a retool or a rebuild, whatever you wanted to call it, Walker is still here. He's still playing. He's still learning on the fly. Gorman is actually probably still starting a lot more than we've seen recently and not become a platoon player with Jose Fermin. Like, because the Cardinals still are trying to win, they cannot let them grow on the fly. And that's why next season is probably the sink or swim moment for Jordan Walker.
So, and it's not just the Cardinals prospects that this is happening to. Like Wyatt Langford, big-time prospect for the Texas Rangers, right? We just talked a little bit ago about the Texas Rangers and the differences between them and the Cardinals. Wyatt Langford so far this year is batting .225 with a slugging percentage of .293, and that's in 130 plate appearances.
And that might fall victim to what T-Bone was talking about, where Texas is still trying to compete.
Tampa Bay. Curtis Mead, one of the top prospects in Major League Baseball. So far this year, he's walking 4% of the time, which is terrible. He's batting .218 with an OPS plus of 63. He's been horrible so far for them this year. You could keep going there's a ton of these different guys that you could, even Evan Carter, a guy that last year, this is probably the comparison, by the way, for some of the Cardinals' struggles offensively for their guys that had success a year ago. Evan Carter came up and was like one of the best hitters in Major League Baseball for the second half of the season last year. This year, batting .218 with an on-base percentage of .305, slugging percentage of .419. It's like an average, a slightly below league average hitter so far this year. It's just freaking hard to be a good big leaguer. Pete Crow Armstrong. We've been hearing about this kid for the Cubs for years, right? One of their top prospects for a long time now. Batting .220 so far this year, slugging percentage of .340. Jackson Holliday, top prospect in all of Major League Baseball. When he came up, .059 batting average with an OPS of 170. Cole Keith, big-time prospect, 162, OPS of 415. I mean, I could go on and on and on with rookie players that come up to the big league level, and they're shocked by the level of competition that they're facing on a night-in, night-out basis.
And to your point on some of those guys, like who'd you say, Evan Carter, that played really well last year? When fans see that, and I fell victim to it last year with Walker, I think what it is okay, sometimes they have a scouting report when these kids come up from AAA. They have an idea of what they think will work. For Jackson Holliday, it clearly worked. They figured out what his hole was, and then Major League Pitching just went right after it. But for some guys, sometimes because AAA level is not as good as the Major Leagues and it is a significant drop-off in pitching, sometimes the scouting report may not be caught up with the bat, so it takes a while for Major League teams to finally exploit that weakness. And I think that's what happened with Evan Carter. With Jordan Walker, they really found it this season to where it was, okay, he's chasing everything. Gorman, it is the high fastball. And really, that one hasn't changed as much. But I think when you see guys that come up and they have that, what we call the flash in the pan moment, and everybody goes, oh, wow, he is going to be a stud. And then he really struggles the second year or a month later. It's not because the player's not a good player. It is Major League Baseball has had time to review over the tape, and these teams are so advanced in their scouting that they can find that one little weakness, and then the moment they find it, they see it works, everybody repeats it.
Isn't
and that's
that
where
coaching
it struggles.
staff then? Isn't that coaching staff versus coaching staff? If they find your weakness,
well, it's part of that, but I think part of it is the coaching staff. Jordan Walker, we'll use him as the example. The coaching staff for the Cardinals was probably telling Jordan, dude, they're going to go slider away from you, and they're going to attack you with the fastball on the outside edge. Your hip is leaking. You will never drive that baseball.
Is Craig Murphy a bad coach because he never got Jordan Walker or Jordan Kyrou to play heavier?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's on the player.
Yeah.
Sometimes the player has to do what is being told to him. Alec Burleson was open about this, honest about it, and said, hey, listen, I was super boneheaded last year. This is my approach. It's always worked for me. 2 years ago, Alec Burleson led his league in batting average. He hit .331. People talk about Burleson like he's like not this top prospect. Dude, he was a top 100 prospect that crushed it at AAA in a way that very few Cardinals have in the last decade. Came up to the big leagues last year and struggled immensely, dude. Really struggled. And I thought he was one of the best answers that I heard this year at Cardinals winter warm-up when we talked to him about what the gap is between AAA and the majors and why it led to his struggles a year ago. This is a long answer, but I think it's a really good one and a worthwhile one. Here's Alec Burleson. This is from 3 months ago now, talking about what Ken Rosenthal wrote about earlier today.
The game's just faster. So that kind of hits everything. Like the game's faster. The game, you know, the speed of the game is not. You can't compare like AAA and the big league. Like it's just different. And I noticed that when I first got called up in the first game playing defense, I was like, I feel like I've never been out here before. So that's part of it. And then I mean the arms that are in the league are just. You don't get a layup arm. right? You don't get somebody where, okay, I know what he's going to throw me, and I know I can hit it, right? You've got every guy that comes out of the bullpen, every starter is a dude, and they're here for a reason. So I think, and they know how to pitch. They know how to pitch. Like you've got your hard throwers, but you've got people that throw 100 that can throw it on the block whenever they want to, which makes it a lot more tougher, right? So there's a lot that goes into it, but there's definitely a big jump that you have to make.
And he experienced it firsthand. This is a guy that went from AAA to the big league level, was one of the best players at the AAA level in terms of his hitting ability, the best, and got up to the big leagues and was terrible last year for the most part. And this year he's adjusting, but it's still really hard, man. He's like a league average hitter this year at the big league level, and that's a massive upgrade from where he was a year ago. So is this a potential coaching problem? Maybe. Do I think that it is specific, though, to the Cardinals? No, I think we just notice it more for the Cardinals because we are watching them every single day, and we have hyped these prospects up for years prior to them reaching the big league level. I also think there's something to the idea of guys being rushed through the minor league system. I think there are some guys that just need more time. And yes, Alex, you're right. They're seeing worse stuff down there, but their bodies are also developing. Their mental ability is also developing while they're down in the minor league system. You think about some of the guys that have come up and had success as Cardinals in the last decade or so as hitters. A lot of them are older guys that it took until they were 24, 25 years old to really reach the big league level and then stay at the big league level. Many of the guys that had some struggles after even a brief period of success are young players, 21, 22, 23, when they reach and then stay at the big league level. So there's something to that as well, in my opinion, personally. But there's a lot to all of this stuff, and the Cardinals are far from the only team that's experiencing it right now. By the way, there's one thing that I want to get to. Alex, you mentioned this earlier today in our pre-show conversations. There's this video that's going around of Jordan Walker discussing his approach. Guys, that's from last year. Like the thing with him being in the dugout, talking about his approach and how he's going to just go back to what worked for him, that's from a year ago. I don't know why this is happening. Like, I feel like an old man yelling at clouds right now, but there's stuff that happens on social media that just gets passed around as if it's a recent interview or a recent thing. This is not news. This is from last year. Jordan Walker discussing why he was sent down to the minor league level. I don't know why it's coming. We've seen probably a dozen different text messages that have come in today saying, have you guys seen this from Walker? Yeah, we saw it and discussed it as an ad nauseum a year ago. So I don't know why that's coming up again today, but just wanted to address that. Yes, we have seen it, and yes, it is from last year. This time last year. It's not new by any
Same
stretch.
scenario, though, so makes sense.
Coming up next, believe
Same
it or not,
thing.
here on 101 ESPN.
Plane to the fire. Positive vibe, boys.
Time to be
Positive
patient.
vibes.
Sing it for Mo, BK.
Believe it or not, I'm walking on air. I never thought I could feel so
Free, flying away on a wing and a prayer. Who could it be?
Believe it or not, it's just me.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text
Always
line
believe
for
it's you.
Believe it or not. You give us a scenario.
Kirsch.
We will tell you if we are believing it or not here on 101 ESPN.
No.
Guys, believe it or not, if the Cardinals win 3 out of 4 this weekend, you're right back on the bandwagon.
Not.
I don't even know what it would take at this point for me to believe.
You got to string together another 17-game win streak for me to be like, oh, hey, I'm
You'd
not.
only be 4 games back at that point.
That's fine, man, but we've seen this before.
We've talked about, is the fan base starting to become apathetic to the St. Louis Cardinals? And I think they've reached that point. Guys, it's really bad when I got to watch 162 of their freaking games and I feel that way. I don't want to watch the Cardinals right now.
Like, when was the last time they walked away from a series with a win and we were like, oh my God, they're back?
The White Sox. Oh, wait. No.
Oh, the Athletics. Oh,
they did win that one.
yeah, but you should have swept that one. No,
they're a good team.
The Cardinals swept the Diamondbacks and then, or not swept the Diamondbacks. They beat the series of the Diamondbacks, then beat the Mets. And we came on the air Monday and we were like, hey, you just went up against 2 wild card contenders and you just won both series. Good for you.
Exactly.
Then they lost the series to Detroit, lost the series to the White Sox, lost the series to the Mets.
There.
What?
There were extenuating circumstances. They had a game that was postponed against Detroit, which led to a doubleheader the next day. That was tough.
The poor Cardinals.
And then
Poor
CB
babies.
Buckner
Oh, there
called
it
a
is.
strike. That wasn't a strike. They should have won that game as well.
Not like they had
There's
2 bats
more.
before that with the
It
bases
really is
loaded.
amazing how you just changed tone in 6 months. 6 months. Don't blame the scheduling. Don't blame the fish. It's on you.
See, this is how it works, dude. I can do this. All right, and then
This is why I hate you.
and then against Sean Manaea, dude, that guy had everything going that
that's
day.
the ace.
I don't know what you were asking for them to do
It's
offensively.
the Cy Young contender. Hit!
And a couple of bad plays. You had the base running mistake, and then you had the bad play by Nootbaar and Wright. Like, just a couple of bad breaks that didn't go their way. They're right there. They're right on the cusp. If those 3 games go the other way, you're at 500 right now. And now we're talking totally differently about the Cardinals today.
We're at 500 right now. Are we? Are we talking different about
That
them
would be
today?
18 and 18, and we're, boom, right in it, baby. This weekend, you'd be going for a potential sweep and getting right back into first place in the NL Central.
I want you to know right now, I really hate you.
Oh, me too, man.
I mean, they're right there,
Stop
dude.
it.
Look at how close these games
they're
are.
right there, just like
6-5, 4-3, 7-5, 4-2 in extra
Dude,
innings.
the Oakland
2-0,
Athletics are
2-1,
closer than you are.
4-2, 4-3, another 10th inning loss, 5-3, 5-4.
Stop
Man,
it.
I mean, 3-2. I didn't
Stop
even
it.
mention that one yet.
Stop it. If those were hockey games, I'd be all on board with this.
Yeah, you mentioned it a million times.
Yes.
The Blues, every time they go into the third period, they're within 2 goals, guys. Yeah, every NHL game is within 2 goals, Alex.
The closer of the Oakland Athletics said that I can't have a light show when I enter the game because the electric probably won't get turned back on. That team is closer to first place than you are.
Is that true?
Yes. I think he said that on Foul Territory. It was hilarious. He was like, they asked him, like, don't you want to, like,
Mason Miller?
Yeah, he was like, I think it was
I
Eric
believe
Kratz.
that.
He was like, don't you want, like, a big light show because you're so lights out right now? And he
God,
goes,
they have a better record than you right
he said if they turn the electric off, they probably won't turn it back on. They're closer to first place than you are.
Dude, but if you win 3 out of 4 this weekend, right back.
Is this coffee still hot? Can I throw it on you?
All right, Alex, what do you got for us today?
Guys,
Believe it or not.
believe it or not, Drew Bannister lasts longer leading his team than Oli Marmol.
Like, in terms of, like, how
the
long
head
their
coach,
term
first
is?
manager.
Okay, not like if Marmol got fired tomorrow, it technically would be the right answer.
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So, like, the next manager to get fired would be Oli Marmol, believe it or not,
I'll believe
out
it.
of him and Bannister.
I'll believe it. Now, if you asked who had a longer tenure, it would be close. Dude, he could be fired this year, and Bannister could coach
And
3
Bannister
years and be
could
gone.
coach 2 more years and it'd be tied.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
but I mean, he's got to get the extra 2 years.
I would say, oh, man.
And this year was only half a year for him, so it doesn't even count.
Wasn't Ollie's half a year? Oh, no, his first full year.
He had
with
a
Schilt,
first
yeah.
full year.
Yeah, I'm going Ollie. Ollie's going to have a longer tenure. Listen, man, he's getting extended at the end of the offseason. You don't have to like it, but he's getting another extension.
The last coach that got extended in the NHL in the offseason got fired that next season.
Yeah.
Sheldon
NHL coaches don't mind.
They said, Sheldon, we love you. Here's a 2-year deal. Hey, you're fired.
Yeah, I would probably take Ollie because I just don't know how much pressure is really on him, and I could see, and I don't think Bannister's under a lot of pressure, but I could see like the retool really accelerates this year, and they're like, whoa, Dvorsky's already a number 2 center, and they kind of scuffle along next season. I could see where Bannister's gone by then. Yeah, so
I would say Bannister. I don't. If they,
of course you would.
If they are last place again this year, you can't run it back with that same manager.
T-Bone?
Guys, believe it or not, and I'm bringing this up because I know who's not going to agree with this and who is.
Hit 'em, B.
Believe it or not, the Pittsburgh Pirates will make the playoffs before the St. Louis Cardinals' next playoff appearance.
Believe it.
You don't believe that.
I do believe it. Cardinals are headed towards a rebuild. At least the Pirates are out of the rebuild.
What?
Before they go into another rebuild.
No.
They got better players than you, man.
No, they don't.
Yeah, they do. O'Neal Cruz, better than anybody you got on this roster right now.
No, he's not.
Paul Skeens, better than any pitcher you got on this roster right now.
That's true.
Their
So's Jerry
bullpen,
Jones.
probably better than your bullpen.
That might be true.
It's probably equal.
Their lineup stinks, man. I'm sorry. Their lineup is not good.
Your lineup is not good.
Agreed. But I believe more in the future of the Cardinals lineup than I do the future of the Pirates lineup. Their lineup's horrific. O'Neal Cruz is, by the way, basically the same as everybody you have in your lineup right now. Except he strikes out a ton.
And he hits more home runs than anybody in your lineup.
Not really, it's 5. He's basically been Nolan Gorman so far.
That's better than Goldschmidt and Arenado combined.
Yeah, you're right. But he's not. That's not a team that I'm looking at and saying, oh, wish I had their situation. I don't. I absolutely do not. They have 2 really fun pitchers, but other than that, I think they're still really far away. I do not think they're close to reaching a postseason.
I would agree with him.
I think the Reds are closer than the Pirates are.
I'd agree. They got to fire their manager. David Bell stinks. I would not believe this because really it comes down to one thing. The lineup that you mentioned, if they would splurge on the lineup this offseason, they're a playoff team. Like this coming offseason, if they say, let's go get 2 bats, Pirates are a playoff team.
Go sign Juan Soto.
They've got pitching. Hey, I don't need to tone because I haven't even gotten to my point, damn it.
Your
Turn his mic off.
Your point was the Pirates spending money.
Again, hold on. I didn't get to finish my statement. The
Tanner,
reason I'm not
finish.
believing this, thank you. Man, you know what? Mike is off,
finish. BK's
so
done.
I can finish.
Go for it, buddy.
If they would spend, they would be a playoff team. But what I was going to get to before I was so rudely interrupted, by the way, and that's why his mic is off right now, is because they're not going to spend money on that lineup.
It's a great point.
They haven't developed talent internally. Brian Hayes is not a star. O'Neal Cruz is not a star. Jack Sawinski's not a star. They're all decent pieces. And if they would spend money, yeah, I would believe this. But because they won't, I'm not going to. And BK, your mic is now back on.
I'm glad you got to that point, T-Bone. That's a really good point by you.
It would have been better if it wasn't rudely interrupted.
Still think they make the playoffs before you.
And now, first a tone problem, and now you just interrupt people.
Well, he does that all the time. Believe me, that's what pisses me off more than anything.
Man.
BK, what's the text line got to say?
305 from the 305. Believe it or not, the Blues are regretting signing Bannister after seeing the news today that Keefe has been officially relieved of his duties. Alex, believe it or not?
I'm going to say not believe it. I think the Blues knew that he was going to get fired. I think once Sheldon Keefe goes and has success wherever he coaches next, that's when you regret it.
Yeah, I'd say not because if they wanted Keefe, they would have waited to announce the hiring before he technically was fired.
Believe it or not, guys, I agree with you. Mo, Ollie, and Goldie will all be back for the Cardinals in 2025. I'm not believing this. I think 2 of those 3 are, though.
Ollie and Goldie.
Ollie and Goldie.
No, Ollie and Mo.
Oh, Goldie.
Wait, how's Goldie going to be here?
Cardinals Hall of Famer.
Goldie will not be back in 2025.
You said all 3 will not be back.
And then you said 2 of 3 will
you said
be back.
2 of 3 will be back. Sorry, if I misstated that.
Okay,
my
that
bad.
makes
But
more
2
sense.
of the 3 will return. Mo and Ollie will be back. Goldie will not be.
I'll say believe it because I think Goldie's gone, and if you finish last place, I think Ollie's gone, and if Ollie's gone, Mo's gone.
I kind of agree with that. I would believe it. Can I throw another one out here real quick?
Don't piss him off again.
Guys,
He's interrupt you.
Believe it or not, the last 2 seasons where you had 2 older, I'm going to call them legacy players. If you want to define Goldie a different way, it's fair. Believe it or not, the last 2 seasons put an end to the legacy player, quote unquote, for the St. Louis Cardinals moving forward.
What do you mean by that?
So
like they don't bring those guys
we saw
in?
them bring back Adam Wainwright. That was a legacy player bring back in Adam Wainwright. And we saw it just snap a finger, gone, not a major league pitcher, probably wasn't even a double-A pitcher last year.
Yeah.
Paul Goldschmidt, legacy player. Now, he was under contract, so his is a little different. But we've seen with his age, once again, we've talked about this a lot. Snap the finger, it's gone. Paul Goldschmidt, not the same guy he used to be.
I'm not believing this. I think they will continue to operate the way that they have because they saw it work with Albert. I think
you just did it with Matt Carpenter too.
I think they would consider the Yachty thing to be a success. Wayno, it was really just a 1-year deal. I think they'll continue to do this. I think they'll continue to bring these guys back.
And that's why I go into this rebuild conversation. You got your ownership group, and the ownership group are going to do the same thing that they've always done.
I think what you're seeing though is that
The
barring
downside of
something
it.
unforeseen. No, it's barring something unforeseen. What we're learning is Goldie and Arenado will not be considered legacy players here in St. Louis.
Who's the next?
That's what I think has changed, is whether or not they're considered in that criteria. And right now, the answer is no. If Goldie, if they had success this year or last, and he was a big part of it, Goldie would be back next year as a legacy player. But he's not that. Not here in St. Louis. He has more of a legacy right now in Arizona than he does in St. Louis, despite him winning an MVP here.
Who's the next legacy player that the Cardinals will bring back?
Somebody that's one of these young players, but I don't know who it's going to be.
Blend's options being picked up, baby.
I feel like
they don't have a current legacy player on the team. It's part of the problem.
Michael Wacha.
All right. Coming up in about 15 minutes, we'll dive into the junk drawer. But next, JR had a great fan survey earlier today. We want to answer a few of the questions for you with our perspective next year on 101 ESPN.
Terry Henderson here with a SportsCenter update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The Cardinals back in action tonight as they start a 4-game set with the Milwaukee Brewers. 6:40 will be first pitch. Sonny Gray will get the start for St. Louis. The SportsCenter is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
With Alex and T-Bone on BK. All right, let's get into JR's fan survey that he posted earlier today over on The Athletic, Alex. He asked a bunch of different questions, including, did the Blues make the right choice in hiring Drew Bannister full-time? All different kinds of questions, basically asking where you're at with the St. Louis Blues. I want to get your thoughts, Alex, on some of these questions that he asked and where you would lie with your answers. The first one is, what is the Blues' biggest need going into this offseason? If you had to answer, Alex, their biggest need heading into the offseason, what would you say it is?
Top left-handed defenseman. A piece to round out your top 4 defensive core, I think, is the biggest need for me. We've talked a lot about the second-line centerman. We've talked a lot about, depth. I still view this, and especially watching a lot of the teams perform in the Stanley Cup playoffs right now, if you don't have a top 4 that you can trust to play 20-plus minutes a night in every scenario, I don't think you're going to be able to compete in the Western Conference. And I believe you got 2 of those guys right now in Parayko and Leddy. I think Kessel can be that next year. Maybe Falk, but all of these guys that I just mentioned, 3 of the 4 are righties. You need another left-handed defenseman to play with Colton Parayko.
And just to give you the answer, he has 4 different options here: offensive shooter or finisher, a second-line center, secondary scoring, or top 4 defenseman. Those are the 4 options that he presented. I've been saying all along, I think the biggest need is a second-line center. I don't think they're going to fill it because they believe that Dalibor Dvorsky is eventually going to be that player. Yeah. So it's hard for me to say, hey, going into the offseason, biggest need. Well, it's the thing they're not going to address most likely. So among the things that they could address this offseason, I would go a shooter or a finisher. I think having somebody on that top line with Jake Neighbors and Robert Thomas, who is a true legitimate 40-goal potential, just a sniper, that would be the thing that I would say is their biggest need heading into the offseason.
They feel like they got all that in the system, except for that defenseman.
Yeah, that's where I am. Short term, I think it's both second-line center and a finisher, to your point, but I feel like they are saying publicly, hey, Snuggerud's the finisher and Dvorsky's the second-line center long-term, so we don't want to sign anybody or trade for anybody that's going to block those spots. I think the one for me is the top 4 defensemen because they just do not have anybody in the system that really profiles that way. Look, I liked what I saw from Kessel this season. I mean, a contending team has him as either a 7th defenseman or as a 3rd pairing defenseman.
Next one up here. Should the Blues re-sign David Perron? Alex, the 2 answers are yes, he would help the team, or no, let it go.
Let it go.
My answer is, was, and always will be yes. Go ahead and bring him back. I think he's he would be one of the top 6 forwards on this team. I think he plays the style that you're trying to move back toward, and he cares about this organization in a way that very few players do. I would bring him back. Yes, it's a legacy signing, but it would probably be a 1-year deal for a 36-year-old. It's not going to hurt you. I would absolutely re-sign him. I don't think he would re-sign here, but if he's open to it, I'd do it.
Yeah, I don't see why. I don't see why there'd be a reason to be opposed to this. I mean, he brings you a one-time shot on the power play, which makes you better. You've got leadership, which I do think is going to be important for a lot of the younger players. I don't think he's going to come back, though. I think the bridge was burned when you didn't get a contract offer from Doug Armstrong, and I'm not sure you're going to get that back. Plus, I don't think David Perron's leaving Detroit.
Yeah, I would want him back because I think we talked about those stopgaps. I think he's the stopgap top line guy. Can put him up on that line, and he's got finishing ability, and he could help the power play too. The power play is desperately missing that one-time shot. So until Snuggerud is here and can provide that, boom, we've got Perron that can slot into that as a stopgap filler as well.
Next thing up, which Blues first-round pick from the past 3 years will go on to have the best NHL career? Dalibor Dvorsky, Otto Stenberg, Theo Lindstein, Jimmy Snuggerud, or Zach Bolduc. Those are your 5 options. Wow. Dvorsky, Stenberg, Lindstein, Snuggerud, or Bolduc. Alex, which one would you say will go on to have the best NHL career?
I'm going to say Dvorsky.
Same.
I think Snuggerud is going. It's a tie for first, as TLR would say, because
you get to pick one. There is no option on this fan survey to be able to
turn
click
his damn mic
multiple
off again.
things.
Let me finish. I'd say it's a tie for first because Snuggerud is going to be a very good goal scorer. But the slight edge, if I could finish, man, two segments in a row.
Click one or the other, man.
No, there needs to be a explain your answer on this one.
I'm looking at the survey right now. There are 5 dots that you can click. You can't click multiple of them. You can't explain your answer.
How about option 6? Screw you. Dalibor Dvorsky.
I would go with Snuggerud. I think Snuggerud's got the shot, and I think he's the one that has the ceiling to be a superstar. And I think Dvorsky, who do we have? Was it Butler that said that he could? Or no, it wasn't Butler.
Yeah, it was Butler.
Butler that said he could be Ryan O'Reilly. Ryan O'Reilly to me was never. I would too. I don't know if he was ever a superstar though.
You're overrated.
That first year he was, and then it declined fast.
I think he was a star. I don't know if he was ever a superstar, and it's probably because it was the one year that you mentioned. But like when I think of like a guy that with a shot, a one-timer can score on the power play, like I kind of think of Vladdy, and that was a superstar when he was here in St. Louis. So I would say Jimmy Snuggerud. I think his ceiling is a superstar.
I think he is going to give Blues fans a lot of what they want before Dvorsky will. What I mean by that is, like, Blues fans are still hoping to get that 40, 50-goal scorer. I think Snuggerud can be that. But Dvorsky, to me, is going to have the longer career because he's more of a well-rounded player.
All right, last thing here, and this is where I want to get to your Ferrario Five, Alex. What should the Blues do with the number 16 overall pick in the 2024 NHL draft? Alex said yesterday he thinks they should and probably will trade up with that pick. That is one of the options. The other, best player available, I think everybody's going to end up clicking that. Pick a forward, pick a defenseman, or trade down. Alex, if they stick and pick at number 16 overall, what do you think they should do?
T-Bone, hit that open.
You're listening to BK and Ferrario. It's time for the Ferrario Five, a top 5 list of very random things. So, Ferrario, give us your top 5.
All right. A couple of these guys aren't going to be very intriguing, but the top 2, I'll give you a little sneak peek. They're both defensemen. But we're going to start at number 5, a forward. He plays in the USHL, which is the hockey development program. This kid's name is Michael Haig, 6'1", 190 pounds of centerman. And Scott,
just like the name Haig.
I do like Haig. If you could get a Haig and a Haig, we're talking about a good offseason for the Blues. Scott Wheeler said this guy has potential 100-point upside, but he's also a dog on a puck. He said he's hard to get off of the puck. He's always in the neutral zone forechecking. He does got some skating issues, but he's bigger and he's going to grow into his size. So this is a guy, I think I've seen a lot of mock drafts that have this one being the pick by the Blues. This to me is just one of those safe picks where you pick the best available player and the best upside. The next one, which surprise, surprise, kid from Sweden, which should probably put him at number 1.
This is who they're picking.
This seems to be the one. This is the one that JR had on the Athletics mock draft. Michael Brandes Nygaard. Probably butchered that, but this is an Alexander Steen type. Think Otto Stenberg of who they just drafted. He's got goal scoring ability. He's got two-way ability on the puck. A lot of people have him going higher than this because they think that this is more of the, once again, a safe pick by teams, but he's nothing more than at best a third line forward for you. And this is kind of where that draft drops off. If you're outside of the top 10, it does drop in terms of like forwards are going to be middle of the pack, defensemen, maybe some upside, but you're making more safe picks. Number 3 on this list is a dude who's got some size, and I actually like this one. I think this is the most realistic. He's fallen back in the draft a little bit, but it's because his World Under-18 Championship tournament wasn't good. His name's Liam Greentree. He's got a little bit of this Ryan Leonard in him. We all remember how much we loved Ryan Leonard last year. Now, not as much upside, but he had 36 goals and 90 points in the Ontario Hockey League last year. He's 6'3", 211 pounds, and he plays the wing. Not a good skater. I think Wheeler said that he is slow, but he's big and he knows where he scores goals, and it's in front of the net.
He'd fit with our bottom 6.
Probably very much so. Like, I think you're right in terms of a bottom 6 guy, but you got somebody who could maybe be like a Jake Neighbors in terms of 15 to 20 goals in the NHL because of his size.
And to be fair, correct me if I'm wrong, Dvorsky was not known for being a great skater, right?
Yeah,
That was his biggest question.
That's still his flaw right now is his skating ability. But by the way, the part that Wheeler said about this, why I thought like this is so perfect for the Blues, is because he said when he doesn't score goals, he takes penalties and puts big hits on players.
Sure.
So I'll take some nastiness in my game. Number 2 on this list. Now we get to the interesting part. This is, you're going to have to hope for a lot of things going your way in the draft, because all the mocks I've seen taken like top 12, Adam Juracek. His brother was drafted, I think he was drafted 3rd or 4th overall by the Columbus Blue Jackets. Right-handed defenseman. He's 6'3", if I'm not mistaken. Now, the only part of this that he could drop in the draft is because he had a knee injury this year that kept him out of a lot of the season for his team over in the Czech, and he didn't play in the tournament for the World Juniors.
Oh, interesting.
But he's 17 years old. He's 6'3", 178 pounds. He's
Skinny.
Well, I mean, you're 17 years old, man. You remember, you call me fat all the time, but I wasn't that skinny at 17 years old.
Same.
You know, you get bigger as you get older. But this guy has top 4 defensive upside, according to Scott Wheeler. And once again, physical player. The part of this that you have to be concerned with is the knee injury. Does that stunt his ability to take the next step? But you might get a gem in this one. Number 1 on this list, and this is the guy that I love, mostly because I can't get my big boy Russian that's going to probably go in the top 5. But this one's Carter Yakimchuk. Can't pronounce his name.
We'll learn the names eventually.
But he's 6'3", 190 pounds, plays defense on the right side, had 30 goals this year in juniors hockey as a defenseman.
Dang.
And he played like 20 minutes a night for them. So this guy does have top pair upside, according to Scott Wheeler. I think everything I've seen has him going somewhere between 10 or 11. But as I've said before, weird things happen in the draft where teams take bad picks. This might be a guy that if you could find a way to move up a couple in the draft, this is your top pair defenseman that you could get in on.
And looking at, I haven't done a lot of research yet on the draft, but in looking at some of these mocks over the last couple of days, it seems like you kind of got to get into the top 12-ish.
Yeah.
To be able to find one of these defensemen that you're looking at right now that can really help you.
Or hope one of them drops.
And if that is the case, the Blues are going to have to make some moves to be able to finagle their way into the top 12.
Yeah, I think the bottom 3 are more likely because that's going to be players that fall down to you. But if you can be a little aggressive and move up, you could probably get one of those defensemen. If you want to be real aggressive, either Sam Dickinson, Anton Silyayev, that's my 6'7" Russian boy, and then Jerome Aginla's kid, Tij Aginla.
I want him.
He's probably going to go
I know nothing about him, but I want him.
Jerome Aginla's kid. He had like 55 goals in his junior hockey team this year. They're thinking he's going to go probably to Calgary at number 9.
This makes me feel old. I remember him playing.
That's your latest edition of the Ferrario 5. The Junk Drawer is coming up next here on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Let's dive into the junk drawer. T-Bone, what do you got for us today?
Guys, have you seen this story of what Airbnb is going to do for 2024?
BK's going to get angry. Probably charge you for putting soap down the toilet.
I mean, he won't be allowed at any of these because of that.
Yeah,
But
you've been barred.
so they are doing.
Sure, my rating has definitely suffered as a result of that.
They are
situation.
doing what they are calling the Airbnb Iconic series, which is, I think I've brought up one of these before, but they released their full set. So it is, you can play at stay at a like iconic place. So like one of them is the house from Up, where what's his name? Carl, is that the old man? So what they have is they've got the house built like it is in the show. They've got what did they say? 8,000 balloons attached to the top of it, and to make you feel like you're in the Up house, they lift the house on a crane while you stay there to feel like you're adrift.
Yeah, cool. I'll puke all over your Airbnb.
So you've got that. They've got a spend the night in the Ferrari Museum, which is in Italy. They've got the X-Men Mansion from the X-Men movie
that'd be
series. They've also got one of the most famous art museums in Paris you can stay the night in. And then they've also got Stay in Prince's Purple Rain House. And then one other is...
Big Prince fan, are you, BK?
Oh, one that...
I think that would be amazing.
Another one that would be cool. I don't know exactly how they're doing this.
No, I don't like Prince.
Really?
Yeah, I don't like Prince.
Why?
I don't like his music. Don't like his voice.
Okay. That surprises me.
I just...
I mean, he's an unbelievably talented musician.
Fine, man.
Anyways,
but music sucks.
Sorry. Fair enough. I disagree with that, but
There are two others that I want to bring up here.
I would have let you if you wouldn't have rudely 3 in a row.
No, that one was on you. I'm totally fine on that one.
Oh, you big on Prince too?
I like Purple Rain.
The hell out of here.
The other one that is interesting is, you know the movie Inside Out? And they've got the control center for the main character's emotions. You can stay in the control center. They've built a room to be the control center to help promote Inside Out 2, which comes out, I think, this summer. And then the other one is, I can't remember what place this is called. It's some name that I haven't heard of. But they've got a clock room. And you can stay in a clock room that overlooks the giant city, which looks pretty interesting as well.
You know the one they missed the ball on?
They've got also some weird ones that are like you can stay on tour with people like Doja Cat, Kevin Hart.
saw that.
They should have done the Ghostbusters headquarters.
That'd been good.
Like a fire station built into the... That's what they should have done. That would be
museum. Our museum is the clock room. That's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
Or they should have done like built
The
it...
house from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, that kind of stuff.
That, or they should have did it...
Barbie house.
The National Museum. Like, not the actual museum, but build a Airbnb up like the main lobby of the National Museum from...
I was thinking like Little House of the Prairie, do one of those, but like air conditioned.
No, why would you do that with air conditioning, man?
Oh, you
Make it
think
like National House or Little House on the Prairie. You got to poop on the floor.
I don't know
You
if
get
I'd
no
ever stay
AC.
Yeah,
It's called camping.
I do think it's kind of cool the way that they're doing it.
I think they should do it to where you stay in like actual famous houses.
So most icons are free. All are priced under $100 per guest. Apparently, it's basically a draw. It's a lottery. So you try to get in, put your name in, and then there's more than 4,000 tickets available for the year. And if your name is drawn, you get to go stay at this place. So it's not like they're spending $100,000 to stay at place X, Y, or Z in any given night. It's just really good advertising for Airbnb to say, hey, you were able to go do this. People then post it on social media or whatever. It's free advertising for them. Smart. I like it.
And I was like trying to think of other ones like you just brought up. I brought up a Little House on the Prairie.
That's a wild one to bring up, man.
If you could do like one, I don't even know how you would do it, but like the Bat Cave, if you could do a Bat Cave one.
Just recreate a lot of these different things.
All these cool different places. I'm trying to think of another like Disney
it just
one.
costs too much.
The
to
Avengers headquarters. That'd be pretty sick.
That'd be a good one. But yeah, I find this fascinating because like even though like now the house actually floating is a little concerning. I don't know if I'd want to stay in
I
that.
would vomit everywhere.
But I think that would be kind of cool, and especially if you had little kids like you guys do. I think that would be really cool.
They should do a Shrek's Ogre.
They have it.
Do they?
Yeah.
I think maybe that's the one I brought up before.
They have
was
that
that
available.
one.
That's the one that would be fun.
With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll dive into some NFL quick hitters, including a player who apparently had one team in the NFL call him after the draft, after the first round was completed, to let him know, hey, we flipped a coin between you and another guy. Unfortunately, it landed on the other guy. Sorry, we didn't end up picking you. I'll tell you who that was coming up in about 15 minutes or so. But next, what lessons can be learned about some of the managers that are failing to succeed elsewhere? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. So, Alex, as I look around Major League Baseball right now, some of the teams that are struggling, I think to myself, man, I think that guy's a good manager, but his team sure isn't succeeding. Let's go to Miami, for example.
Golly Marmol? Oh.
I think Skip Schumacher is a really good manager. I think he's a good coach. I think he is a good dude. I think that guy knows baseball as well as just about anybody in the sport. And last year, he had a whole hell of a lot of success. I don't know how he did it. He was piecing that thing together with toothpicks and bubble gum, but he found a way to get that team to where it needed to go. And then in the offseason, they took a little bit of a step back, but it wasn't like they shed everybody from their roster. They got rid of like Jorge Soler and a bunch of dudes that are like fine players. The roster didn't look this bad in the offseason until they traded Luis Ariz, and now obviously you're waving the white flag.
But then lost all of their pitchers.
They did lose some of their pitchers. Some of them just came back and weren't as good as they were a year ago as well. They're 10-29, dude. They are one of the 3 worst teams in Major League Baseball so far this year. It's them, the White Sox, and the Rockies. Those are the 3 worst teams in the sport. And I think he's a really good manager. The reason why I ask this, Alex, is because once again, I'm sitting here and I'm wondering to myself, how much influence can a manager have in today's game? Like Bob Melvin, do we all agree he's a good manager? Or do we not think that he's necessarily the same manager that we once did? Because last year he failed to succeed with the Padres despite them having a talented roster. This year, I don't think the Giants are overwhelmingly talented, but they're also 17-21. They are basically the mirror image of the St. Louis Cardinals, and they do have a lot of brand names inside of that clubhouse right now. I'm not doing this as a coping mechanism for me to tell you that Ollie Marmol's a good manager despite the record, I promise. But when we see these things around the sport, does it make us reconsider the amount of impact that a manager can have, or do we still feel the same way?
No, I think it should make us reconsider the amount of impact a manager has. Like, if a game is ruined because of a manager's decision, then you can start to sit there and look at it. But like Miami, I'm with you. Skip Schumacher is an awesome manager. We saw it last year. Skip Schumacher is also dealing with a problem that starts at the front office or the ownership all the way down, and you lost your 2 best pitchers that were supposed to be leading your team this season. So I think that explains itself. I do think there are times when a team is built for success, but they're not having success, that the manager has, just the way I look at a hockey coach. Like, I do feel like a roster, if it's not built properly for the manager's not going to have success. But if the roster's not listening to the manager, then you might need a new voice in there. So there are different scenarios that work out. But to sit here and point fingers and say, well, this team sucks because the manager is bad, I just don't agree with that, because I never believe it's the coach. I always believe it's the players.
I look at the Arizona Diamondbacks, for example. Torey Lovullo, I thought he was a terrible manager when he first got that job. I thought he was awful, totally in over his head. I remember a series early on in his career where the Diamondbacks were playing against the Cardinals, and Alex, I genuinely thought he was trying to lose based on some of the decisions that he was making in that series. I think he believed they were the right ones, but they were just bad choices by basically every metric that was available to be able to use. Last year, they go to the World Series, had a really fun, young, exciting team, youthful exuberance, all of it. They're 17-20 this year, guys. This is a team that has had very much a rubber band effect of really good, and then now the next season they come back and it's kind of touch and go. And it's even touch and go within individual series. Right now, they're beating up on the Reds inside of the Central Division, but they lost 2 out of 3 against San Diego, lose 2 out of 3 against the Dodgers, ended up losing 2 out of 3 against the St. Louis Cardinals. This is not a team that has come back and really followed up their World Series pursuit with the kind of start that we expected this season. Most of their wins are coming against some of the worst teams in Major League Baseball, with Cincinnati and Colorado being the vast majority of the wins that are on their schedule so far. I don't think that's because Torey Lovullo is a bad manager. I don't even necessarily think it's because the players are all that bad. I think sometimes weird stuff happens in Major League Baseball, dude.
The text line brought up an interesting one, and I do think there's something to that with the Houston Astros. I mean, like, you lose Dusty Baker, who is looked at as a hell of a leader.
Health with their pitching staff.
Yeah.
Maybe, but I mean, offensively, they have not been good at all, and it's the same players. And I mean, I do think there are times where a manager has a mental impact on individuals in their game, and some of that's just comfort and confidence, knowing that, like, hey, this guy's got my back. I can go out there and perform the way I need to.
I can't refute that.
Yeah.
There's no way for me to. But I would say that the guys that have thrown the most innings for them so far this year are Hunter Brown, Ronel Blanco, who's been good, and Spencer Arrighetti, who has an 8.5 ERA. Hunter Brown has an 8.9 ERA. JP France is next on that list. He has a 7.5 ERA. When 3 of your top 5 starters have an ERA of 7.5 or above, you ain't going to win a whole lot of games. And most people have never heard of 3 of those starters that I just mentioned. Hunter Brown had a decent season last year. I think that's the biggest reason for their struggles. But to your point, Alex, on like, could it also be about the manager? Sure, there could. I think the biggest reason why they're failing is their pitching staff. I think somewhere on that list, maybe it's in the top 5, is that they don't have the same manager that they did a year ago to be able to prevent it from crashing down to earth in a way where, like, there is no floor to this. I keep coming back to, I think there's a certain level of base level competence that you need out of your manager. And then from there, it's about the players. If you have a guy that meets that requisite threshold and your coaching staff meets that level, you're probably going to be somewhere in the middle. There are maybe 3 managers that change it in a really big way on the top end, and like 3 to 5 on any given season that are so bad that you have no chance to win with them in that position. But otherwise, I think most of these managers are somewhere in between. And then it comes down to, what is your roster? Do you have the guys in place to be able to win on a year in, year out basis? So that's where I'm at with the manager.
And that's where I feel like the leadership of the players is most important, especially in baseball. Like, if you have the guys that when they speak, the other players listen, I think that makes a massive difference. Like, there are, of course, obvious excuses for it, like the Houston Astros. You got tons of leaders on that team, and I don't think it really matters. But there are times, like, you look at, like, the Atlanta Braves. I think Brian Snitker is awesome, but I think you could put any manager in that position and have success because of the Acuna Juniors, because of the Rileys, the types of players that you have on that
strangely,
roster.
I don't think that's necessarily because of their... I think there's some of that, absolutely. I'm not dismissing it entirely. But I think a lot of why the Braves are successful is because Austin Riley, Michael Harris II, Ronald Acuna, Marcell Ozuna, Matt Olson, and Ozzie Albies are all all-star players. I think that's why they're awesome. And they have a really good pitching staff as well, and good coaching, and good culture. Like, all of it comes into place. The most important reason why the Atlanta Braves are good is because they have superstar players littered across the
But you pluck one superstar out, and they still find ways to win.
Yeah, the 2021 team would be the counterpoint to me, because you did not have Ronald Acuna Jr. I would also say, though, they had so many other really good players.
Well,
I think we underestimate their supporting cast.
Well, the Phillies are a perfect example of how the manager really doesn't matter. I mean, you get one guy out, you put a new guy in, and they go from bad to worse, and they have success that season. That's just the players taking over because somebody got fired because of them playing poorly.
I think that one was the manager. Like, I think Joe Girardi was a negative for the Philadelphia
he was on the back
Phillies.
end of what I was talking about, where sometimes you have 3 to 5 that are so bad that you cannot win with them.
And I didn't think he was meeting that criteria that you're talking about, because I think you're right. Like, there are 30 managers in baseball. There's like 5 that probably really prop up their team. There are 5 that are actively hurting their team, and there's that muddy 20 middle that are just, they're there.
And on that point, Snitker might be one of the 5.
Yeah. I think he is, because I think that 2021 season you bring up, sure, the cast, but how many teams do you see in baseball, like, when their best player goes down? We're about to find out with the Cardinals, by the way.
Yeah.
How really good Ollie Marmol is as a manager of, hey, our best player just went down. Can we keep the ship afloat? And it's not anything that he's doing, like pulling the strings. Oh, wow, Snitker really built this great lineup. No, it's keeping the clubhouse composed and saying, hey, just because he's out doesn't mean the season's over.
I am curious what it looks like as we go the next week or two here. And the reason why I say that is because you're playing against the Milwaukee Brewers this weekend, the team that currently leads the division. You've got a 4-game set coming up against them. Guys, the Cardinals caught a huge break yesterday with that rain out. That was a big deal for them, because now Sonny Gray can start in this game against the Milwaukee Brewers. If they want to, they can construct their rotation where the next 4 games you've got Gray, Lynn, Gibson, and Michaelis going, instead of having to have that bullpen game against the Brewers. And then you've got an off day next Thursday. So it's just less pressure on the bullpen. Like, you could put that bullpen game on Monday probably, and then you've got Sonny Gray coming out of the bullpen game. So it allows them to get a little bit more creative with the way that they're going to construct their rotation over the next few days. It also allowed a full rest day for your bullpen, which had been overused over the last 5 games probably. So that helped them a lot. I think that this is as much pressure as they've had on them in any individual series. I kind of felt this way against the White Sox. Clearly, the Cardinals disagreed with me. If you go out there and get swept, lose the next 4 games against the Brewers, it's really hard to explain why nobody would be fired on Monday. And I don't say that with any happiness in my heart. It would suck. But if you're 15-25 and you just lose a 4-game set against the team that is currently leading your division, and you find yourself almost 10 games back on May 13th when we come in on Monday morning, man, that's it. It's game over, game, set, match.
Yeah,
You're back to where you were at this point last year.
I still don't think it would happen. I think you ride this storm out all season long.
And I'm talking, like, I don't think the manager will or probably should be fired. Like, hitting coach at that point?
At some point, you just got to fire somebody.
Yeah, well, I feel
manager, hitting coach, whoever.
But if you're going to fire the hitting coach, you do it when you can't hit the worst pitching staff in Major League Baseball.
I probably agree. Maybe they said, hey, we want to give him a little bit more leeway here. We'll give him an opportunity to see if he can get this right with some of the struggling superstars. But if you do that this weekend again, I mean, you're going on a road trip, Milwaukee, and then against the LA Angels, who are also terrible. And then you come back home, and it's Boston, Baltimore, Chicago. You missed the opening. That was the opening in your schedule. Now things get tougher, dude.
This is where it, like, completely falls apart, and there's no coming back from it. Especially if you lose this one and the Angels one, and then you come home for that homestand.
Yeah,
you might be talking
Baltimore, Chicago.
You might be talking about winning or losing the next 5 series.
It's possible.
Which then that's over for you.
That would bury you.
Yeah, you're done.
Again, you can't win the NL Central in the first 2 months. You can certainly lose it, and that's where they're at.
What was their record at the end of 40 games last year? Because that's where we'll be on Monday morning when we come in. The end of the 40th game last year.
That was like 10 or 11 games
15,
below 500, wasn't it?
No, what were they? What would he?
They were 15-25. If they get swept over the weekend, they will have the
wins.
exact same record as they did at 40 games last year. The exact same record.
It's different this year. It's different.
Because that was when they started going on that winning streak. Remember, they were 10-24, and it was like, oh, God, this is it. It's over.
BK was like, the Cardinals are coming. The Cardinals are coming.
And then they win 3 straight lose, win 4 straight lose, win 2 straight lose, win 2 more lose, and then it just self-imploded.
I'll be excited after they lose and get swept, then Mo comes out and is like, look, guys, we got to be patient with the process.
They got to 21-27, and then that was the end of them being competitive the rest of the way.
Man, I really hope that doesn't happen this weekend.
Man, June,
they cannot.
June, July, August, and September. Oof.
At least split the series. Split the series, look competitive, and the people that are still optimistic can find that optimism on Monday morning. But if you lose 3 out of 4, you get swept. Good luck. Good luck finding that optimism side of you.
Are you just trying to psych yourself up?
Yeah, I was going to say, you're just finding a way. You're going to find that loophole.
It's not the end of the road, damn it. NFL Quick Hitters is next here on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone on BK, you know what that music means. It is time for some NFL quick hitters here on BK and Ferrario. Alex, yesterday, there was a great interview that took place. It was on Sirius XM, I do believe, and it was with Terrion Arnold, a cornerback from Alabama who, it was with Birmingham, a Birmingham sports radio station. And he went on, and they were talking to him about his process of getting drafted. Now, Terrion Arnold ended up going to the Detroit Lions. Great landing spot for him. Well, apparently, he was of the belief that he was going to be going earlier in the draft.
Oh.
And a team that was considering him earlier called him afterwards to explain that they actually flipped a coin between him and another player to determine who they would select. Here's Terrion Arnold explaining that.
They knew that the Raiders, it was a possibility that they took me, and actually the Raiders coach, they called me after the draft. They were like, we actually had a coin toss between you and Brock Bowers and landed on him. I was like, oh, wow.
That sounds like some Commanders-ish. And we didn't know who to go with this pick, so we flipped a coin. Heads was you, tails was Bowers, and we got tails.
Even if that's true.
I hope Brock Bowers fails now for the Raiders because of that.
So I can't decide if it's better if that's true or false. Because if they really did that in the war room, they were like, oh, God, we're struggling right now. Like, how do we decide? We got this corner that could be a Pro Bowler. We got this tight end who could be
You know who shouted that out? Mark Davis.
Yeah, Mark Davis was like, yeah, I'll flip a coin.
Yeah,
With his awful haircut.
If that's true, it's fireable. And everybody should be cleaned out of the organization because that's embarrassing.
I hope Terrion becomes a Hall of Famer and Brock becomes a bust because of that.
Also, if it's true, why do you tell that to the guy that you passed on?
Yeah, exactly.
Because he's going to tell everybody.
And if it's false, why did you tell it to the guy that you passed on?
Honestly,
why did you call him during the draft? Why are you calling somebody that you didn't select?
If that's how they make first round draft selections, that is the worst run team in the National Football. No, in all of professional sports. If we're picking players that high in the draft off of a coin flip.
Now, I would have totally bought this story if it was told when Gruden was there. Because remember, they took Farrell at 5, and it was like, whoa, this guy was on everybody's 40th spot on their mock drafts. This is wild. And to your point, PK, I don't know why you call him to tell him that, why are you calling him that even though you didn't pick him? I've never heard of that before. Sure, the coin flip one, sad that it might be true, but I've never heard the fact that any team is called a prospect and man, let me tell you how close we were.
We loved you.
If we had an extra first, we would have so taken you.
Look, man, we loved you and your talent, but we didn't want you better because of a coin flip. George Washington said that you weren't going to be a Raider.
Can you imagine being that player and getting that call and you're like, oh, I'm getting drafted. Mom, come on. The Bills are on the clock.
I'm going to put it on speaker.
And it's Antonio Pierce who calls you in the middle of the first round after passing on you and says, hey, man, I just want you to know, we really thought about it. We couldn't even come to a decision between you and Brock. We had to flip a coin.
And when it hit the table, you were drafted, but then it bounced.
Imagine being Terrion Arnold in that spot and be like, what am I supposed to say? Thanks?
What if you did a view into the war room and it was just Mark Davis sitting in the corner? Be like, son of a damn it!
It's a weighted coin. He wanted Brock Bowers all along. So, yeah, that is apparently something that took place. Alex, as we continue on with some NFL quick hitters, Mike Florio and Chris Sims on their show the other day, they ranked the top rivalries in the NFL heading into 2024. Now, Mike Florio's included the Chiefs versus the Bills, the Chiefs versus the Chargers, not totally sure how that one qualifies, and the Packers versus the Lions. Chris Sims had the Chiefs Bengals, the Chiefs 49ers, and the Eagles 49ers. What would you have right now as your best current rivalries in the NFL? I'm not talking about the historical ones, but competitive rivalries currently that exist in the NFL. What would you have at the top of that list?
I think Eagles and Niners is up there, but I think my number one is Bills and Chiefs. There's not a game, unless it's like Texans versus Lions in the Super Bowl, which that'll be great, but there's not a game that I schedule my day around bigger than Bills versus Chiefs. We do so much of the Brady versus Manning. That is, to me, and I know that Mahomes just wins every time, that still is the Brady-Manning matchup, watching Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes. I can't put Burrow there because you haven't been there very often.
So I think that's the second best one because what you said, I agree with, of where you have Mahomes is just like Josh Allen's like the baby brother to him, you know? The reason that I would put Bengals over Chiefs for me is because you have this GOAT that is currently playing in Patrick Mahomes. That's won back-to-back Super Bowls with this great Kansas City Chiefs team, and he can't beat Joe Burrow. Like, that right there is the story to me where it is, man, when the Bengals are right and Joe Burrow's playing well, they can beat the Kansas City Chiefs. They are the kryptonite to the team that is going to be remembered for in this decade. This new era of football outside of Tom Brady is going to be remembered.
With the Patriots for most Super Bowls in the last decade.
It's going to be remembered for Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. And what's going to get lost in all of that, and it's why I think the rivalry is so good, is the fact that Joe Burrow's had his number, man. And that's why I say, to me, that is the number one rivalry, with Chiefs and Bills being a close second.
And maybe it's because the NFL is not like other sports to where I feel like rivalries are built in playoffs. And I mean, in NFL, rivalries are built in the regular season.
I would agree. I think it's playoffs. I mean, the Bengals beating the Chiefs in the playoffs is what's built that rivalry.
But that was one time, man. And again, I understand the Bills and the Chiefs, that the Bills lose every time. But that's why I feel like that one is at least one of the better rivalries, because you're always wanting to see it. The Bills, you're always wanting to see them finally get that take.
Yeah.
And the last 2 years for Burrow, you haven't even been there.
I think it's Bengals-Bills because they made the Chiefs bleed when nobody else can. Like that to me would be the one.
Bengals
Chiefs, excuse me, because they made the Chiefs bleed, and the only other guy that's done that is Tom Brady.
Yeah.
It's Tom Brady and Joe Burrow. Nobody else beats the Chiefs in the playoffs. That's it. And there's one of those two that still remains in the NFL today, and it's Joe Burrow. So I would have that at the top of my list. We haven't mentioned anything from the NFC, and I think there's a reason for that. It's because there's been so much turnover that has taken place on that side of the bracket. I think Green Bay versus San Francisco is quietly emerging as one of those potential rivalries. They've played in the playoffs a couple of times now recently. This past one, man, if Jordan Love doesn't make a inexcusable decision of throwing across the middle there late, Green Bay might have been the team that ended up going to the Super Bowl this year. Like, they were that close to being able to get the job done. Obviously, still got to continue going along there. But I think that's one that we probably take a little bit for granted. And then I think the other one is the Lions versus the 49ers. I think that's going to be on that list very soon as well. So those would be the top two for me in the NFC. Do you guys have another one that immediately comes to mind for you in the NFC side of things?
It doesn't have as much luster because that's a really good one. I didn't really think of that one. 49ers and Rams, to me, kind of has a little of that, to where McVay's had somewhat of the number of Kyle Shanahan in the playoffs, but he's never beaten them in the regular season. Like, it flips roles. When San Francisco plays the Rams in the regular season, it's basically San Fran is able to take care of business. But then, like, when the Rams went on the Super Bowl run 2 years ago, it flipped. Sean McVay was able to beat Kyle Shanahan in the game that got him to the Super Bowl, but I don't think it even has that much luster. I just don't know if there's really a great one in the NFC right now.
I think this year you're going to see the start of Lions versus 49ers.
Agreed.
Especially because of how the playoffs ended last year, and the Lions are starting to enter the conversation.
Lions, to your point with Green Bay, I think Lions-Green Bay could be a really good one. They're going to see each other twice.
I think Lions are going to be a team that everybody hates in the NFC in the next couple of years, and you're going to start to see them.
It's coming. You just wait for it. Where you're right, Alex. Yeah. People are going to hate the Lions very soon, because it was really cute when the Chiefs first started out. They're fun, exciting. You've got this Patrick Mahomes guy who's throwing it all over the yard, wins the MVP in his first season as a starter. Like, Andy Reid's this lovable character, and then they just didn't lose. They just kept winning, and that becomes super annoying. And if the Lions keep doing this over years, they no longer are the lovable Lions that lose every year. Now they're a big, bad lion that's beating the crap out of everybody in the postseason. So I'm totally with you. I think they're a team that is worth watching, and they will go from the loved, plucky underdog to the team that everybody watches out for in the NFC going into every single season.
Love it.
Bears-Packers could become another good one. That's an old classic rivalry, but now that you got Caleb Williams and the Bears
NFC
starting to come back up.
Probably the most fun division this year in the NFL because of those three teams.
We know the NFC West is trash.
Whoa.
It's either I think the two North divisions, AFC North or the NFC North, are probably going to be the best divisions this year in the NFL.
Yeah, that NFC North is going to be fun.
I think the AFC, outside of New England, I guess you're probably right. I was going to say AFC East, I think, is going to be very compelling this year. Now that Rodgers is back and they're like in a win-now mode.
The Bills went down a little bit. Dolphins went down a little bit.
Yeah, but you
Patriots, I don't care about.
Still got Josh Allen. Dolphins will still have like the speedster offense where it is just dump the ball to Tyreek and watch him go. The reason that I'm not as compelled about the AFC North, in my opinion, is I don't find Cleveland that compelling outside of the show that is Deshaun Watson, and I don't find Pittsburgh that compelling.
I hope the Titans are better than what we expect them to be because I want somebody to be competitive in the AFC South because the Jaguars we know won't be and the Colts stink. So the Texans.
The Colts are going to be interesting this year.
Richardson stays healthy.
I got to see Anthony Richardson stay healthy first. And
They won 9 games a year ago.
Yeah.
And now you've got your actual quarterback. If he's healthy this year,
I just think
watch out for them.
I think the Texans are going to run the table in the AFC South, and it's not going to be competitive.
Chiefs are
So
in
I
the worst
hope
division.
we get the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they've got a really tough non-divisional.
What are you talking
schedule.
about, man? The Raiders are in there. They got Brock Bowers, thanks to the coin flip.
See if the coin flip did them any favors. The Chargers taking a step back, and the Broncos are like, let's ride with Bo Nix. Like,
Chiefs' non-divisional opponents this year include the Ravens, the Bengals, the Texans, the 49ers, the Browns, Bills, and Falcons.
God, the non-division games are better than their division games.
Absolutely.
thank goodness they have 6 easy wins on the schedule.
All right. Final thing here, just to pass along. Boomer Esiason said earlier today, I think either today or yesterday, that he believes the NFL and Netflix will be in bed for a Christmas Day football game. So Netflix is potentially where you could be watching a Christmas Day game this year in the NFL.
Woo!
Get excited. All right. We do have a new piece of news here for...
Are you seeing the Rashee Rice news?
Yeah, what happened here?
He socked a photographer in the face and broke his jaw.
Is this for sure?
I mean, it was TMZ, so...
An offense report obtained by the Dallas Morning News on Thursday reveals new details about what led up to the allegations of an assault in which police suspect Kansas City Chiefs Rashee Rice. Freudian slip there. The report obtained by the news through a public record request said a suspect assaulted a photographer after luring him back to a downtown Dallas nightclub. My God. Under the premise that he was being hired to take pictures. You bleeping idiot.
And he just wanted to punch him in the face?
Officers were dispatched for reports.
Man, Chiefs are winning another Super Bowl.
According to the police report, the photographer believed the suspect wanted to hire him to take pictures. When he returned, he was, quote, made aware of where the suspect was at by other members of the entourage. The photographer found the suspect, who told him to take a look at Instagram messages on his phone. According to the report does not detail what the messages said. As the photographer looked down at the phone, the suspect punched him on his left side of his face. The photographer went to the hospital. The law enforcement official said the man had visible swelling on the side of his face.
I don't know about you, but this team seems like it's going for a three-peat.
Dude, if this is true,
They're going to have to cut Rashee Rice.
You can't keep him.
I think we're getting close to that.
This is what, the third different incident in the last month?
This is the same one as the last one. This is just an updated
Gotcha.
report on the last one. So two significant incidents though.
Yeah.
And this is not a fit of rage. This is not where like a guy said something to you and in the
he
heat of
lured
the
him
moment,
to a place so he could
you're
hit
like,
him.
No, believe you, punch him in the face. That, while terrible, that happens. That bar fights happen all the time, right? Lance Lynn gets into one in the first inning of every game.
And then adjusts the jockstrap as he walks back to the dugout.
If this dude is out here luring a guy back so he can punch him in the face.
Yeah, that's assault, brother.
Why are you so stupid? You got everything in front of you. All right. Coming up next, are the Blues comparable to these playoff teams that are performing right now? I'll try to get myself back on track next year on 101 ESPN.
Jay Hendricks here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Cardinals back in action tonight as they start a 4-game set with the Milwaukee Brewers. 6:40 will be first pitch. Sonny Gray will be on the mound for St. Louis. The Sports Update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, independent Mare Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
What's the identity? What's the personality? Who's fulfilling what roles? I mean, we saw some good hockey at times last year, but when you watch these playoffs right now, this team doesn't resemble what we're watching on TV.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, that was Jeremy Rutherford on the morning show earlier today talking about how the Blues do not resemble the teams that he's watching right now in the playoffs. Alex, hard to really disagree with that in any meaningful way.
Especially in the second round. The first round, they kind of resemble the Washington Capitals.
Yeah, we did.
I'd say better goaltending than Washington Capitals, but kind of the same team.
Alex, what are the Blues missing then? Like, I'm with you. They don't look like these teams. I watched the Rangers, the Hurricanes, the Stars. I watched the Bruins and Panthers last night. Hot damn, some physicality in that one. Embarrassing at the end, but we'll get to that in a little bit. These teams don't look like the Blues do. And some of the Western Conference teams maybe more so than the East, but the East teams are the ones that I think are real contenders. How do you get there?
Yeah.
Feels like a complete overhaul is necessary to get to where those teams are.
I don't think it's an overhaul. I mean, like, the first thing that I think you don't, not that I don't think you don't have, is you don't have finishers. Like, I'm watching the Florida Panthers game last night, and look, I mean, it was 6-1, so it was a shellacking late, but they finished those opportunities that they had on offense. And the one thing that we crushed the Blues for this season was how many opportunities would they get with odd man rushes and the ability to create scoring chances, and then they'd miss the net. You know what I'm seeing all of these playoffs teams not do? Miss the net. It is always on net, and there are always bodies in front. And that feels like you need an overhaul, but you really just need a buy-in from these players to go to the front of the net, because that's how Florida's been scoring the goals. That's how Vancouver came from behind last night against the Edmonton Oilers. They made it hard on their opponents to get the puck out of their own zone. And the Blues don't have, at least didn't have, the ability to keep plays alive in the offensive zone. And I know you didn't like it, but the Blues just do not show the same type of passion that some of these players do in the playoffs. Whether it was the Florida Panthers that got out of hand late, or even in a game that the Edmonton Oilers and Vancouver Canucks had last night. Like, Vancouver was down by 3 goals after the first period, and they were pissed off in the second period, and they were finishing checks. They were throwing extra blows at the opposition. Blues don't do that. And granted, regular season's different than postseason. Your reaction in February doesn't really matter compared to your reaction in the playoffs. But do you honestly believe that if the Blues are down by 3 goals in a playoff game, that they're going to keep putting that passion into the extracurriculars to push them back into the fight? I think they got a couple guys that do it, but they don't have the same type of team mentality that these playoff teams do.
Yeah, I don't care what the Bruins did last night. Like, I saw that, and I'm sure Jamie will clip this off, and he'll tell me how wrong I am. And that's totally fine. I never played hockey, but I don't think what the Bruins did at the end of that game showed me anything. It proved absolutely nothing. As they were out there fighting, they were continuing to have goals scored on them to lose by more and more and more at the end of that one. So that showed me nothing. But, like, the Bruins are a good hockey team, and they show fight in other ways. Like, I don't care about the actual fighting at the end of that game where they're getting their ass handed to them by the Florida Panthers. I care that they fought their asses off against Toronto to get out of that series. I care that despite almost blowing a 3-1 lead again, they came out in Game 7 and proved, we got this. And then in Game 1 against the Panthers, we got this. They're just a really good hockey club. I thought this was interesting on the text line, Alex. Somebody said, are we seeing how much the Blues blew it by not getting Matthew Tkachuk? I mean, the answer is yes. Yeah, well, we knew that.
You're going to know that for the rest of his career.
Did you see what he did this season, points-wise? Mm-hmm. 26 goals and 88 points. Did you know that, T-Bone?
I knew it was good.
The first half of the season, though, he was not producing.
I remember,
that's what I mean. 26 goals this season. We would have been...
Well, remember, we had the Panthers, one of the Panthers commentators on the show the first time the Blues played him. We said, hey, why is Florida struggling? He said, Kachuk's not there yet, but give him time.
And remember, he was injured at the end of last year. He played through an injury in the postseason, and typically those recover.
The reason I bring that up is just because, like, Matthew Tkachuk does so many other things that he's still such an unbelievably valuable resource in your roster. 88 points is nothing worth, like, sneezing at, right? It's a great season. But 26 goals is not what they expected out of him. But because of the way that they constructed that roster, they're able to make it up. And because of what he does away from the puck, he's able to distribute. 62 assists is a really good year for anybody. And he plays with a physicality. He's got everything you could want from a player. Matthew Tkachuk has that in spades. He is the identity of any team he's been on thus far in his NHL career. The problem is those guys don't exist. He's a unicorn. So, like, how do you get to where the Panthers are? Well, go find the next Matthew Tkachuk. Unfortunately, he doesn't exist.
You need 3 guys to do what Matthew Tkachuk does. Yeah. Like, you need 3 guys to play.
It's the
physicality.
Thing.
Yeah, exactly.
They needed 4 different defensemen to do the things that Petro brought.
Like, Jake Neighbors provides the nastiness to his game. Robert Thomas provides the offense from his game. We're talking about finding a finisher on that line. Matthew Tkachuk would have been all 3 of those things. So, yeah, those players don't exist. And frankly, it's amazing that player got traded, because that should be one that is stuck on one team for the rest of his career. But, I mean, like, Florida to me is an anomaly, because you don't just get gifted the Matthew Tkachuks. Like, I look at what Dallas has done. Vancouver, to me, if you're a Blues fan, Vancouver is the team that you look at and you'd be like, how do we do this? Now, go get a number 1 defenseman first, because that's what Quinn Hughes provides. But, I mean, once again, Dakota Joshua dictated part of that game last night for the Vancouver Canucks. And that's where it goes back to, like, there's a passion in that roster that I look at the Blues and say, yeah, you're not there, because your players don't have that same fight in their game that the Vancouver Canucks do. And that's where number 1 priority should be for this Blues team, whether you got to go out and get one, whether you have to, like, force it into the players' heads that they have to play this way. That's how you win playoff games.
He's Alex, that's T-Bone. I'm BK. We'll hit the rewind next year on 101 ESPN. Hey, if you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check out the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It is all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
Cardinals back in action tonight against the Milwaukee Brewers. Sonny Gray going to be on the mound for this one, starting game one of this series. Alex, they brought him in to be a stopper. They brought him in to be a guy that when there is bleeding, he stops it. If you look at the last three wins that the Cardinals have, he was on the mound for 2 of them. That is dating back to April 27th.
Hot damn.
It is May 9th. Are they going to get a win tonight?
No. He is the stopper, yes. Problem is, you have no stopper on the offense. And, well, actually, that's not true. You had one, and he forgot where he was supposed to sit behind the batter, and now his forearm is broken. So
going up against a gentleman by the name of Tobias Myers tonight. He's a rookie for the Milwaukee Brewers, 25 years old, a right-handed pitcher. So far, he's had 3 starts in the big leagues, allowed 4 earned runs against the Cubs, 4 earned runs against the Yankees, and 1 earned run against that putrid Pirates offense earlier this season.
Yeah, still not believing that they're going to get the win in this one. This will be your best chance to get a win, but somehow it won't go their direction.
Yeah, they're definitely losing tonight.
Really?
I mean,
if they don't win this one, they're getting swept.
I mean, BK, sure, you just read off that guy's numbers. That's fine and dandy. Yeah. Do you remember the 2 starters that went up against the White Sox where it was, man, they've got this lefty that has a 6 ERA.
Yeah, even you hated the former Royal that pitched.
This is the bounce back. Oh, Brad Keller, that's the other one I was thinking of. I was thinking of the lefty that started game 3.
Throws 93. He's not overwhelming. Gets a little bit of chase, but not a lot of swing and miss.
Does he throw a lot of fastballs?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. You're really not getting hits.
He throws primarily fastballs. He'll throw a 4-seam and a cutter, and then he's got a slider that he throws in there.
I mean, he's going to pitch aggressively tonight because you know who he's afraid of in the lineup now that Contreras is out? The answer's nobody.
True. Well, maybe Jose Fermin.
I think the Cardinals win tonight. I think the Cardinals will win tonight.
I think they
it'll
lose
be a relatively
1-0.
low-scoring game, but
How many times?
They win 4-2.
How many
4 runs?
How many times do you have to say that to believe it?
Oh, dude, I'm on how many games? 30. This is 37, and I'm not there yet. So
I can picture
40 to 50.
BK at home with Luca and his little playpen watching the game with him, and BK's just like, Luca, they're going to win right here. Luca, they're going to win right here.
No.
and then they give up 3 runs, and he goes, "Damn it, Luca, we were trying to make this work."
It's not going well, but hopefully tonight everything gets back on track. They win the next 4, and we'll all be feeling good on Monday morning.
The Cardinals are coming.
Alex
The Cardinals are coming.
I'm BK. We'll talk to Al Avila, former MLB general manager, tomorrow about if the Cardinals should go into a full-blown rebuild. We'll do that tomorrow here on 101 ESPN.